Hey, what is happening, YouTube? Welcome to Gas Masks and Hand Grenades. I'm your host, Jeff. Today, we're doing something a little different in terms of the type of interview that you're going to see. Ever since the late 1990s, when I came across Bass Communion and Lustmord, I've been a fan of experimental drone, dark ambient, minimalist, spectral noise, which really a lot of people would say isn't really music per se, but it's more an experience of sonic and immersive aural vibrations. That's kind of how I sort of look at it. It was probably talking with Steven Wilson about these genres that plunged me into the dark underbelly of this style or lack thereof of these sonic anomalies. Some of the early artists I started to immerse myself in were Nurse with Wound, Bass Communion, Andrew Lyles, Hafler Trio, Delirium, White House, Coil, Auteca, Aphex Twin, Biosphere, William Basinski, Harold Budd, and many, many more. And of course, the Cold Meat Industries, Cryo Chamber, and Cyclic Law Labels artists. And so many more, including, most importantly, my guest today, who has created sonic tapestries in most, if not all, of these noise experimental subgenres, which I'm guessing doesn't probably thrill him too much to be labeled like that and categorized, mainly because what he does is kind of uncategorizable in many ways, to be blunt. He currently has 163 releases or credits on Discogs, encompassing full-length albums, singles, EPs, compilations, and miscellaneous items and appearances. That's a staggering amount of work since 1989, and I know from reading other interviews that he isn't always comfortable with these statistics because the physical count is a bit mind-numbing, but it's really the process and forward motion of creation and creating that is the most important part of the equation of what this man does. So let's get him in here to further enlighten us all on this. Please welcome Daniel Menche. Did I get it right?
Yep, you got it right.
Got it right. Cool.
It
hey, man, thanks so much.
Menche, it rhymes with munchichi, all soft and cuddly.
There we go. And we've got a special cameo appearance by Arrow. Yeah. And if you know Daniel's Instagram, you will know Arrow because Arrow is all over Daniel's really cool Instagram. So, Daniel, we're going to pretend like we didn't talk already, but I'll just go through the spiel, right? I really appreciate you doing this because I know it's not usually in your comfort zone to do like a live video sort of thing. So thank you for doing that and doing it on relatively short notice. I was a little persistent, I think, right? You know,
it's fine.
So
no one invites me to do anything anymore. So it's a rare that anyone has reached out. So
well, cool, man. I'm glad you're willing to do it. And we're going to get into this, man. I spent, the last 3 or 4 days really kind of immersing myself in your music. We'll just do that. We'll go music like this. How's that sound? Because it is music. It's sound vibration. It's sonic creation. And we're going to kind of talk a lot about that. And I want you to kind of expand upon that in a minute. But before we do that, I tend to like to work chronologically. But in your case, that's not going to be possible. It's just not. But what we will do is I kind of want to start and take you back to being a kid. And what I want to do with that is kind of like what I call my formative years questionnaire part. Tell me about your first memories of music and how that like early exposure to music affected you. And maybe more importantly, do you have any special memories of specific artists, bands, concerts, or things that, associated with the music thing that really sticks out to you? And the way that I usually lay this out to my guests is that, I'm like you, I'm born in 66. So I'm just a few years older than you, but you and I, we were raised in the 70s. So we're going to have a lot of touchstones of similar things, right? And similar sounds and similar experiences. And for me, my mom was a big AOR fan, like out of the era, the 70s radio. So I remember stuff like Simon and Garfunkel, Bridge Over Troubled Water, and Carole King, Tapestry, and James Taylor, Rockabye, Sweet Baby James. Those are the things I remember. My mom was not a Beatles fan or a Sabbath fan or a Yes fan. That was my sweet spot. But then when I got to be about 9 or 10, I discovered Kiss. And life as I knew it was completely over with. So, it was Kiss, it was Zeppelin, those type of things. What were your experiences as a young guy out there in Portland, kind of growing up and experiencing music?
Well, in the 70s, I had an older brother. He was 6 years older than me. He was cool. He had cool sports cars, right? Not sports car, muscle cars, you know.
Mm-hmm.
He had
Yeah.
cool hair. He was just like a very 70s Hesher, cool older brother. And so whatever he was listening to, which was just kind of classic rock, as a very young child, young brother, I was like, oh, my older brother's cool. I'm going to listen to my older brother's music. And the only band that we can still bond on now, little digression here. Keep in mind, when you're a second son,
Yep.
you're going to be the emotional one.
Right.
The emotional, sensitive, overly sensitive, insecure, crying a lot, kind of a little bit more of a train wreck, whereas the older brother is kind of like solid and kind of thinks in engineer sort of terms, and he is an engineer.
Okay.
So you know how it goes with two brothers.
I was the older brother, so
yeah,
I have a younger brother that's 5 years younger than me. Yeah, and he got beat up a lot.
Oh,
I
okay.
hate to admit, he got beat up a lot. You know?
Yeah, me too.
Yeah. Sorry about that. It's what older brothers do, you know.
Yeah. So as a younger brother, I was the crying, sensitive, emotional kid, but yet, of course, I looked up to him and in all his coolness. So the one band that we definitely bonded over was Deep Purple. Wow. And the thing that I do remember as a child, I remember Deep Purple live in Japan.
Yes.
And there's a moment where John Lord does an organ solo. And I just remember how savage and animalistic the noise was.
Highway Star, I believe.
Yeah. And he just does this long organ solo. You don't see it. You don't see it, but you know that he's rocking the Hammond organ like Jimi Hendrix was rocking his guitar amps. You know, he's doing some dry humping on the organ. You know what I'm saying?
Pretty much. Yeah.
You don't see it, but you know that he's doing that. It's like, it's just for a child. I just thought the whole John Lord thing was incredible. And to this day, it's like, it's amazing that this band, Deep Purple, had this organ player, a Hammond organ player, that just was a crucial part of the whole band. It wasn't like a background thing.
No, he was right up there with Blackmore. It was Blackmore and him were the two focal points of that band.
Deep Purple is pretty damn amazing. They would be amazing to a certain extent without John Lord, but to have John Lord in there is just like mind blowing. And the fact that it's a Hammond organ, not a synthesizer. It's like, you know, I love Black Sabbath as much as everyone else. And it's interesting hearing some of the synthesizer stuff in Black Sabbath, but you know that they had a band meeting. Say, how about we use a Hammond organ? No. We're going to be like Deep Purple. Let's try to use like
good point. That's a great point.
Like an ARP 2600 or something.
That ARP, I think it was. Yep.
Mm-hmm. Deep Purple, John Lord, I should say, they put quite the signature on. But I just remember listening to that organ solo live in Japan, live in Tokyo, Budokan.
Right. I think it was Budokan. Yeah, I mean, just as an aside, Made in Japan, probably one of the greatest live albums.
It's incredible.
Yeah.
But I do remember as a kid, that John Lord organ solo was like my favorite thing in the whole album.
Yeah.
And then in 1982 or 3, my older brother took me to see Deep Purple live, Perfect Strangers tour.
Oh, wow.
And at that time, Deep Purple seemed like old men. I remember, actually, what I do remember, because I was 12, I have to figure that, I think it was Vixen that opened, or was it Girls' School? I think it was Vixen, but I remember I was like madly in love with them.
Oh, wow. Who wouldn't be?
Yeah. And I was really young, and it was one of my first concerts, or it wasn't my first concert, but it was one of my first concerts. And I do remember distinctly so excited that I'm going to a Hesher true rock and roll concert with my cool older brother and Purple. And I've never smoked a cigarette in my life. I've never touched cigarettes. I'm very hyper allergic to cigarettes, but my mom smoked. And so I heard that you have to bring a lighter to a concert.
Yeah, back in the day.
I went and I stole not one but 2 Bic lighters from my mom's purse.
No way.
And I got to the concert at Deep Purple, and I remember when John Lord was doing the organ solo, I took out the Bic lighters and I raised them up, both hands, and put the flame as tall as possible.
Yeah, yeah.
And I remember holding them up, and my brother turned around, looked at me like I am the biggest dork in the world. Like, it was like, what are you doing?
Yeah.
Like, why did I bring my younger brother to a Deep Purple concert?
Yeah.
You're embarrassing me. This is so. But then it was kind of like, why do you have big? Why?
Where'd you get those? Yeah, would you steal
Yeah,
those?
like, what are you doing? And I was like, I'm so there with John Lord. I have 2 lighters and the flames were at full power.
That's awesome.
And then the flames went out,
right?
And then I put the Bics back in my mom's purse. Then that night I was like,
and
back.
All the stuff was gone.
And then the next day, I remember my mom trying to light a cigarette. She's like, what the hell is, why? I could have sworn these were full when I last used them. What is going on? and I was like,
That's funny. Yeah. You were hiding from that. Do you remember the first, so like was made in Japan, like the first real cognizant memory of rock music that you recall from back then?
Oh, well, here in Portland, we only had one station that everyone listened to. It's KGON. It was just the rock station. So I was just raised on classic rock. I was raised on whatever my older brother was using. So there just wasn't anything alternative really going on.
Yeah.
Like this, this like deep in the heart of 70s.
Sure.
And, my brother got me into Yes, and I really liked Yes a lot. And I remember starting to buying the Rick Wakeman solo albums and kind of, it's like, I mean, they're kind of cool, but kind of not. I mean, it's just so
kind of pretty nerdy.
And then the Van Geld's albums were, I thought they were pretty cool. But again, I was just a little kid, and my bedroom was covered with those Richard Dean posters.
Oh, really? Yeah.
Covered.
Yeah.
My whole bedroom was covered with Richard Dean posters, the artist who did all the Yes covers and more. Yep. And so that was my little fantasy world when I was like under 10 years old. Like,
yeah, Dean did like Uriah Heep, and the 70s, he was the king of a lot of that artwork back then, even into the 80s too. It was kind of like if it had a Dean cover on it, you knew you were going to buy it. You had to have it, that kind of thing.
Yeah, so there, that's synthesizer music was kind of. I listened to it because I thought it was kind of like a weird, strange, magical sound, but the sheer violence of John Lord's organ was really like, wow, it's just like this
super attractive to you.
Yeah, it's very attractive to me. And then I do remember like there was this one. There was a store here in Portland that was strictly sold new age music on cassette. It was before CDs. It was before, but it was like strictly cassette. I used to go in there and they had a listening station and I listened to it and I was like, why is it I hate this as a child?
Yeah.
I don't like this at all. So there was this thing of, trying to take in, electronic music in the 70s and just not really feeling very satisfied with it. I know now it's so trendy. Everyone loves it. And they fall over backwards to get all that new age 70s stuff. But at the time I was like,
are you talking like, excuse me, Tangerine Dream and Jean-Pierre Jaurès and stuff like that?
I was checking that stuff out. I just was like, it's
not appealing.
Not appealing. I mean, only recently I discovered the first Tangerine Dream album, Zeit, I think it's called,
well, that's not the first. That's actually their fifth.
Oh,
the first is Electronic Meditations. They had the 4 albums out before Zeit. Zeit's kind of what they term. It's actually, it's their 4th album. It's Zeit, Journey, Alpha Centauri, Atem, and then I'm a big Tangerine Dream nut.
Yeah.
And then Zeit, in my opinion, you might agree with me on this. I think Zeit is the beginning of dark ambient music. I think it's the alpha omega beginning of dark ambient music. And I love that album. But the first real, if you talk to most casuals with Tangerine Dream, they're going to say Phaedra was the first album, because that was the first of the Virgin era where they suddenly became kind of like rock stars in the synth world. You know what I mean?
Right.
All with Kraftwerk. But yeah, go ahead about Zeit. Go ahead. Your thoughts on that?
Well, I never heard Zeit before until last year.
No kidding. Wow. Yeah. Okay. That's wild.
I'm actually extremely late to most music that everyone worships. I'm very late.
Mm-hmm.
I'm very, very, very late. So
nothing wrong with that. That's actually, in a weird way, that might work in your favor in a lot of ways, because you're not drawing on all these influences to create what you're hearing in your head. You're creating that really sonically from your perception, which we'll get into in a couple minutes here, because I do want to ask you that terrible question you're going to groan at, but I think I'm going to phrase it in a way that you'll appreciate it. Tell me, so you didn't really, the way I understand it is, you never have really played any like instruments per se. You didn't learn piano or guitar or, okay. Never took lessons, never had an interest in that?
No. The only thing that came close was I had a very strange schooling when I was a kid. I went to a tiny, really tiny private school. We're talking just a handful of kids.
Mm-hmm.
And they were trying to get me, the whole school, which is like just a few kids, to do choir. And I really hated it. I would mouth, I would pretend I'm singing.
Yeah.
But I remember they attempted to try to teach us about music notation, and I was just like, what? Like this, this hurts my head. I don't like this, you know. And then just kind of teaching. I think I do remember as a child them trying to teach about the arrangement of notes and how there's just this, you know, all notes are just arranged in various orders, and it's either it's a bad order or a good order. And I kind of looked at it like, you know, I just didn't. I looked at it like, oh, this is good, this is bad music, because the notes are in the wrong place. So this is me thinking as a kid, and I was just like, I don't like this at all. I'll never. For me, it wasn't until I was like, it wasn't until I was like 18 that I just actually made a sound. I just never really ever. I always thought I was never going to be a musician.
Okay, interesting. Okay,
there's never even was a concept of that.
Okay.
Never a concept at all.
Yeah, I was going to ask you that. So it sounds like that was just something you fell into in a weird way.
I fell into a weird way because really again, being a sensitive, emotional young kid, art of all types of art, that was it. Like I was like, well, this is it. I'm going to be an artist.
Okay.
Because I'm weird. I'm
like painting, drawing, any.
Sure. I'm just a weird, sad, emotional kid who, you know, is constantly crying or wetting his bed. You know, it's just like, you know, I'm just a train wreck little kid, and art is happy, you know, for my young self.
Okay.
You know? But music was like, to me, I looked at music like sports. It's like, I'm not going to do sports. Sports is about rules. You do this, you do this. Like, I had of course I worshiped music. I loved music, but I looked at it like, oh, this is like sports, right?
There's rules to it.
Yeah, I'm like,
right.
You know, but from the get-go, you know, doing art, it's like just doing, you know, abstract expression visually really made sense to me. You know, as a tiny little kid, you know, the kindergarten, they give you finger paint to make finger paints, and I just kind of kept on wanting to make a beautiful mess with the paint. I'm not going to try to paint a kitty cat or a flower. It's like I kind of just want to keep on making a mess with paint and not stop.
Okay.
So that type of mentality, you know, went onward. So
are you Are you synesthesic at all?
I don't think so.
You
I'm
know
not.
what I mean? Do you see like sounds as colors and like?
I don't see sounds as colors at all. But what I can add to that is that when I was 18, I got out of high school and I just went to community college. So
Mhm.
I'm not very educated.
I
So
only have a bachelor's degree. I'm not super highly educated either, so
I don't even have that.
that's
Anyway,
okay. Dude,
so
that doesn't matter, man. I mean, there's a
so
lot of smart people that don't have college degrees, so
so I took a life drawing class at a community college, and I remember going, "Wow, this is cool." People get almost naked, and you just have to draw them, And I had no experience with drawing, and so I do remember distinctly that the teacher. This is like beginning life drawing. It's like, okay, we're going to do 2 series of drawings: contour and gesture. And so as you see a figure, you're drawing the contour of the figure.
mhm.
Remember, I did not like that. I didn't feel comfortable with that. And of course, when I was doing a contour of a human figure, it was frustrating for me. And of course, it never looked good.
Okay.
But then when they did gesture, where you're doing the gesture, which is the inside and just trying to get the energy of the form, I remember doing gesture, and then they would speed it up. It's like, okay, we're going to do 1 minute gesture, 30-second gesture. You're just going through paper,
Mhm.
the charcoal is flying. And I remember I fell in love with gesture. So gesture drawing, even though what came out, it looks like a charcoal explosion. Still, you see the form and everything, but for me, the act of gestural drawing was a true beginning of what started to form the type of music that I make.
Okay.
And I see that the contour way of drawing, I see that in people's minds, because a lot of people, when they talk about music, they're talking almost either in a contour sort of way or a gestural sort of way. Um, and and this could be like really, it's like the technical way. It's like, for instance, if someone is criticizing a band that they don't like the guitar playing or whatever, it's like they're criticizing the contour way of them playing, as opposed to a wicked awesome jazz drummer. That's a very gestural sort
Yeah,
of
yeah.
way,
There's a lot
right?
of movement and
You either got William Hooker, the jazz drummist, versus Neil Peart, the Rush drummer.
right.
Neil Peart is contour, and William Hooker is gestural.
Oh,
I got to open for William Hooker once. One snare, one kick, one cymbal, fucking badass as fuck, amazing, and it was like
really?
so incredible. I didn't want him to stop. It was
Wow.
so incredible and powerful,
I gotta check
and
him out.
that's where I was like, if there's I see a lot of experimental sound. People talk about sound design. It's like, here's a sound design, and I'm really like not attracted to any type of form of like, oh, you're a really great sound designer. I'm like, okay, no thanks. It doesn't have the 3 ingredients that I really want out of music, which is blood, sweat, tears. These not the band, but the actual
Yeah, right.
blood, sweat, and tears.
Yeah,
And
the physical energy of, because we're getting ahead of ourselves a little bit here, but I've watched some of your live sets that people have recorded, and for someone that doesn't have an instrument on them, a guitar, or they're not playing a drum set or something, you're extremely physically into the act of creating these sounds. So I think that, and I've read enough of your interviews to know that for you, energy and inertia and forward movement are extremely important to create your creating process, right?
it's true, but it's also important to be an idiot, to be very embarrassing on stage, to get air quote naked on stage, emotionally naked, and create an embarrassing godlike presence. When I say that, it's like I actually got a lot of this from Iggy Pop when he talks about how it's important to be embarrassing on stage to give the audience something that they can't fathom being that embarrassing about. I'm profoundly embarrassed by any and all of my live performances, and I could make that into a negative. I've learned to make that into a positive, where it's like, well, I just made a real ass of myself on stage. That was pretty idiotic, but you know what? It was honest. It was honestly idiotic and embarrassing. And a lot of audiences kind of go, wow, thank you for thank you for doing that. Just kind of like how people were very thankful for Iggy Pop for, being 75 and going almost naked and doing his thing and dry hump. I know I'm kind of doing a little bit digression, but it's if you're going to perform live, you do have to embody the sound through your body, as embarrassing as it can be. There's a lot of performances where I actually hide out and I don't do anything crazy or embarrassing, and I actually really like those a lot. And but it's a bit of a digression, but there is back to the conversation about the gesture way of like, it's true. And I don't have a musical instrument per se that I perform live with. I mean, I have stuff, but I purposely use the most simplest objects with a microphone on it, like maybe a long aluminum piece of metal, and that's it. I was
going to ask you about that. Yeah.
And for my voice and for my body and such.
So you're actually getting vibrations from your voice, your vocal cords from maybe.
Yeah, I do vocal with my throat. I do that because of insecurity of my actual voice.
Right.
So I'm not comfortable with, although recently I am actually starting to use a real microphone, and I did that recently when Joe Preston and myself performed as a duo opening for Sun about a couple months ago, and I actually did use a like a 50s Elvis microphone. And then doing vocal drones, and it was actually, I really liked doing that a lot. It was actually a lot of fun. So
I missed that. Where'd you open for Sun? Was that over in Europe or?
No, it was Portland.
Oh, just a local show.
Yeah, just Joe Preston and myself performed as a duo.
Oh, nice. Okay.
But it was also because I was performing with Joe. I kind of, we really want to have like a fun set. So I was like, hey, how about I realized I don't have a real microphone, like a real vocal microphone,
like a ribbon mic or a
I don't know anything about microphones really. But then I was like, I had this really ancient old Elvis microphone. I was like, oh, why don't we use this? That'd be really funny. Anyway, there's a lot of stuff that has happened, but going forward, I'm not quite sure. I'm not going to be performing the way that I used to perform. But back to the visual art of gesture, I do remember distinctly falling in love immediately with Rodin's hands. Rodin, the artist, the sculptor. Yes. And I remember the absurdity of Rodin's hands. Like the sculptures, they're bigger than what they're supposed to be. They're exaggerated, and they really were very intense. And I remember seeing, images, how absurd like these sculptures of his figures, how like, wow, that's very powerful looking, but the hands are like way too huge.
Right.
He would disproportion them. And I remember thinking that I wanted to create sound that is like Rodin's hands.
Okay, no, that makes a lot of sense, actually. Yeah.
And I remember when I first the very first time I went to Paris in 96 or so, I was like, oh wow, there's a Rodin museum. I gotta go. I have to see Rodin's hands. It was like
Yeah.
I felt like like a fan of,
Fan of a rock
you know,
star. Yeah,
like,
yeah.
oh, I gotta go check out Rodin's hands.
Right.
This is what inspired me to make my music, was Rodin's hands.
Nice.
And then to, you know, of course, obviously, I have a much wider perspective of what also inspires me, but the idea of this exaggeration of form, it was something that is actually an inspiration for my music. So, and that, again, I'm telling this story as someone when I was young.
Yeah. Right. Right. Things have morphed and changed a little bit since then.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean,
well, let me rein us in a little bit on that. What? So your first concert was Deep Purple, then you said, right?
actually, my first concert was the Moody Blues. That's when I was 10 years old.
Wow.
And strange, and the comedy is that
Crazy.
I was a Moody Blues fan, like the really early stuff, you know, the whole like breathe deep, the
gathering gloom.
Fade to every room.
Yeah.
People look back, blah 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 blah.
Right. Amazing.
Like the really old stuff I loved. So there's some really weird experimental stuff going on.
Dude, I love the 70s Moody Blues. We're gonna do a show on them coming up.
Maybe 60s Moody Blues. I mean, I don't know.
That was 60s. The one you're talking about there was Days of Future Past. Was 60s.
Yeah. I kind of loved that album when I was
67, 67, 68. I love it too. The way they melded pop music with orchestral music with rock music was really unique up through the mid to late 70s. Yeah. You there? Can you hear me?
We gotta freeze.
Uh-oh.
You're frozen.
I'm frozen?
Yeah, you were frozen. So I missed out what you just said.
Oh, okay. I said, yeah, all the stuff from the 70s was, the 60, I believe it was 67 that Days of Future Past came out. And everything from there up through about 77 was killer. They were such a unique band back then. Then they got poppy and kind of blew it. But so that was your first concert. Do you remember what the first album was that you bought with your own money?
Yeah, I do. It was, this is not cool at all.
Bay City Rollers?
No, I was 5 or 6 years old, and my father took me to a record store, and he said, like, well, you got a good grade, so I'll give you $6 and you can buy whatever cassette that you want. I was a little tiny kid, and for reasons unknown, they used to play the Yellow Submarine all the time on TV.
Oh yeah, yep, I remember that.
And I was like, oh, there's the soundtrack. And I remember, I remember going, this is hard worked money. I worked really hard for this $6 to get good grades, and I remember taking it home, and it's like, wait a minute, it's all classical music,
Yeah.
And then side B is a few Beatles songs, and I was like, oh, and I just was like, I think I just wasted a bunch of money on this thing, like. And
did you do the Kiss thing at all? Were you at all a Kiss fan? No, not a Kiss fan.
No. It just, again, it was sort of like there was I didn't have when I was a very tiny kid, I didn't have an influence around me to go evil, and so Kiss was like, oh, okay, but I mean, it didn't really hit. It didn't really. I didn't have any friends really. I mean, kind of did, but not really. Only later, my best childhood friend, she turned me on to, we're the same age, but she was a bit cooler. And she turned me on to, punk and weird stuff. And I do remember 80, I can't remember what year it was, but I remember she played me a few punk albums. And I remember I couldn't get quite into the vocals that much and a few things, but I do remember her kind of like giving up trying to convert me to punk and giving me a cassette of PIL's Flowers of Romance. And I remember Flowers of Romance by PIL completely just, it just slammed my doors open. Like I thought it was like the strangest, craziest album I ever heard.
Oh yeah,
when I was young, and it really was like, this is incredibly strange. I didn't hear Sex Pistols before or anything, so it was just, that was my introduction. And Flowers of Romance, that album completely, like, I was just jaw dropped when I first heard it. And then the whole floodgates opened, and punk was like totally got into my veins, hardcore punk, everything. It just completely converted me. So it all went downhill from there. So
yeah, I imagine too. I mean, were you into a lot of the post punk, the new wave stuff?
to be honest, when I was young, honestly, it was like a fire hose that had a knot in it.
Mm.
And so I had, this Moody Blues, Yes, Vangelis, and then just went into, I do remember the first time I heard Misfits, Earth AD, and I was like, I am completely, this is speaking to me. And I mean, I was really young, but I remember Earth AD, that was the first introduction to me from Misfits. I was like, that whole album, I mean, right when I first heard it, I was like, this is speaking to me. And so I think what I'm trying to get at is, it wasn't about like post-punk, this, that. For me, and I kind of categorize it, it's just extreme. Like being a teenager, it just was extreme, extreme, extreme. Actually, just before we started this interview, I was doing some gardening, and I was listening to WFMU, and they're playing Creator from Pleasure to Kill. And
Yeah.
I was like, man, this stuff was so extreme in 1980, whatever.
86, 87.
Sure, and so really, I kind of got the extreme injection,
So did you get into like thrash then when okay.
Oh yeah, I mean, the thing about the thrash, like, yeah, sure, yeah, it was like the whole gamut. I got into skateboarding, of course, skateboarding, and
so you got skate punk, you got.
It's really, it was more about the physical, like your body is changing, your body is, just wants to destroy itself with physics. I'm a goody two shoes. I never got into I'd never done a drug in my life.
No kidding.
Yeah, I'd never done a drug in my life. Never touched a cigarette. Never touched weed. Never just, alcohol is just something I just,
very little.
But just never get drunk.
That's great, Daniel. That's great.
Well, I mean, I've accidentally gone drunk before, and I really wish I didn't. But like, I'm a very like,
straight-laced kind of good dude.
Yeah, but at the same time, though, I destroy my body in other fantastic ways. I mean, I went skateboarding this morning, and
that's crazy. You're how old? 54?
53. Yeah.
Okay, so I'm 57. Now I do have some real bad health challenges, but I, like you, got very healthy in my late 40s into my 50s. When my kids were grown, and after I'd been through divorce and all that stuff, I got super freaking healthy, man. Playing soccer 5 days a week, mountain biking like crazy. I mean, stupid mountain biking, like taking on trails that I had no business taking on, and flipping off the bike and thinking I broke my femur when I didn't. But, crazy shit like that, where I was pushing myself. And up until when I got sick, with what I'm dealing with now, I was still pushing it. And I get you completely. You and I are very much alike in a lot of ways, that pretty sensitive. I wasn't like crying all the time, but I'm a pretty sensitive dude. And I'm very hip to other people's feelings. And I try to be very inclusive, and I like having a lot of friends. And when people don't talk to me, I take it personal, that kind of stuff. You know what I mean? Yeah. So I get where you're coming from. And reading about you, let's segue into your music now. I know that here's the and this, I'm going to tie it in there in a sec here. I know this is kind of the dreaded, lame as fuck, lazy question here that you're likely going to hate trying answering, but what is and how do you explain your thing, your musical thing? Because to call it music isn't really I feel an accurate term. and I know you hate nouns. So how would you explain your sound thing that you do to a layman or a novice or that's not really familiar with experimental genres of music? And the reason I brought that up is that because I know that you think in terms of action, you think in terms of movement and forward progression, like with your body, with your athletics and things like that. So try to tie that up if you can. We only have 4 people watching. It's the middle of the afternoon here out here. So, but this will be watched by people. I know it will. And I want you to kind of try to say, hey man, you've never heard of Daniel Menche. What is Daniel Menche? What's he putting out there? What is it?
Well, I don't want to. I think I might have to apologize because I don't want to sound like an armchair philosopher. But for me, when people kind of go, "Oh, is it noise or is it music? Are you doing noise or are you doing music?" And noise became a genre word that people got excited about I don't know, like 20 years ago or so.
Yeah. Yep.
It's a word. Noise is a word that for me kind of reminds me of a lot of how a lot of the 70s punks that are called punk, how they groaned. Like you ask Lou Reed or Patti Smith or Iggy Pop, like, oh, you make punk music, right? And they would kind of go, ugh.
Yeah.
And I'm kind of like that with the term noise. But to really break it down, I do see that we as humans, we have a curse. It's the humanist curse. So humanism is this bizarre, ridiculous idea, belief, curse, as I would call it, that we're a little bit more special than the rest of the animals. And animals make noise, humans make music, beautiful music for gods and God and everything. And so when people hear a type of music, or like say parents listening or hearing a teenager listen to Slayer, they're going to go, well, that's a bunch of noise.
That's noise, yeah.
Because that music is something that animals would like. Whereas as a teenager, you're like, hey, don't you remember Where the Wild Things Are, that children's book? I mean, that's what I'm rocking, that shit. You know what I'm saying? Like this ain't, so for me, it's like the challenge is for myself as a musician is to make music that creates a very conflicting debate, balance, unbalance, like two fighters in a cage of animal and human. And it's like you kind of like, this is music, right? This is starting to reach to the skies and tickle God's belly button, right? Like, or is this like animal? Like this is like a tiger ripping flesh out of an elk. Like what? This is very confusing me. I feel kind of, I feel like that's always kind of the goal is to create a humanist confusion, a humanist problem, a humanist
duality.
Duality.
Yeah.
It's like the story of Jacob in the Old Testament, where a stranger comes and he's wrestling him. He thinks it's a devil, but when in the morning he wakes up, it was actually an angel type of thing. It's that's where, again, I know I'm doing some heavy-handed type of stuff, but really, if I wanted to go, I am an absolute total musician. I am making music for the divine purpose, which is what music was for a long time, especially in the West and a bit in the East. Music was intended for, a greater good, a greater something, a greater this, a greater than the people.
Well, like you said, it was kind of most music early on was made in homage to gods. It was made in a church primarily, usually, the early stuff. So you nailed that perfectly. Yeah.
But to really make a good point is, absolutely, and as far as the 20th century goes, absolutely, without a doubt, and I highly doubt there's going to be a debate about this, the most controversial music, the most dangerous music, the music that created the biggest threat was jazz in the 20s. And you got to understand how controversial jazz was. I'm not a jazz fan, by the way, but the history of jazz is appealing to me, and how dangerous and threatening it was to a lot of people. It made people dance in ways that was very ungodly.
Yeah, very sexual. Mm-hmm.
It created a bonding of all different types of people of various walks of life and cultures. You know, jazz was dangerous.
The other key point to that too is, I think, is that jazz was primarily performed by blacks. And because of that, there was the cultural dichotomy that, you know, especially in the Western cultures, that, well, these uppity blacks are now making music, that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
I, unlike you, am a huge jazz fan. I love Miles Davis, love John Coltrane, love a lot of
me too.
and stuff like that. So yeah.
But I just want to emphasize that even if a person doesn't like jazz, you need to understand and respect like how much of an incredible threat it was, because a lot of people thought of it as being animalistic, especially the African angle of it. And the truth is that all music has come from Africa. The concept of string instruments, percussion, you name it, came from Africa. And those instruments were inspired by the movement of animals. You know, rhythm comes from analyzing how the legs of animals walk, how humans walk, but especially, you know, when you're watching a jaguar going across a field to chase it, so those rhythms of the legs became an inspiration for a lot of polyrhythms in African music. So it all comes down to that all music and sound that humans make comes from the animal world. And you know, especially if you go into a Native American music, it's like all of this is all of Native American music is inspired by the animal. Whereas for many centuries, the idea of music was to try to touch God.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? It's like,
yeah.
You know, and with jazz that came in, you know, in the early century, I mean, that opened up a whole bunch of other doors for dangerous music, threatening music. And so on and so on. So jump to the 1980s when I was a teenager, dangerous music was a life source, like an absolute life source. And the more dangerous, the better. I mean, I would see Poison Idea all the time. I saw them every single time they played in the 80s. Every single time I thought I was going to die.
Yeah.
They're really violent shows. They're violent. It was pretty violent. I mean, kind of on a level of like, I don't want to say it was a good old days. It was kind of awful, actually. But it was amazing, you know, to experience all that. But that was the appeal, is, you know, making dangerous, you know, absorbing dangerous music, and then in turn making my own version of dangerous music. I'm not saying my music is dangerous, but the idea is that I get this a lot from people that love ambient music, like a lot of the younger people. They want ambient music to kind of listen in the background or to take down their anxiety, or you know, they're using ambient music kind of like a pill, like a pill that's be chill.
Yep.
And they kind of look at my music as a threat. You know,
some of your music is very threatening. I mean, I remember we talked backstage about Steven Wilson and what an influence he was on me in the early 2000s. I worked for them. I worked for their management, and I kind of created their street team for Porcupine Tree 1999, and I did that up until about 2010 when they called it quits. And Steve and I used to go back and forth. He's the one that introduced me to Lyles. He introduced me to you, Nurse with Wound, a lot of really killer, weird stuff. And, you know, I think you probably take that as a badge of honor, being called weird in that respect from a musical sense. It's not meant as a denigrating term. It's meant as a term of endearment in a weird way. Mm-hmm. Calling your music weird it's a good thing.
You know,
and your early music was fucking weird, dude. There's some violent, weird takes on sound that, you know, like Field of Skin, for example, or Incineration, or you know, these are pretty intense albums to listen to. And they elicit, if I'm getting you right, they elicit animalistic responses.
Yeah.
Is that a fair
Animalistic responses, but at the same time, though, as soon as you start thinking about animalistic, one directly goes into the violent world. I actually not on that tip. I kind of like the idea of like making music that sounds like a grizzly bear snoring or resting. It's like it's the quiet time of animals that I really like. Do understand that when I was young, I worked at the local zoo.
Mm-hmm.
And I worked in the bear department and elephants. Okay. So my job, I was a kid, and it was a volunteer thing. It was something that you kind of do to, when you get older, it'll make your resume look better. So it was like my parents were like, "Hey, you're going to volunteer in the earliest mornings at the zoo, shoveling shit."
Yeah, basically, yeah.
But you gotta understand that I was able to go work in the back scenes of the bears. They had all different types of bears, and I had a lot of time where I could just, it's just me and these gigantic beasts with a huge, like, door, bars.
Right.
I would have like, I had like a grizzly bear reach out and grab my foot and try to pull me in once, and that shit out of me,
Scary, yeah.
But and the elephants were really incredible too, but just totally terrifying. They empty out a room to move the elephants out, then I would have to go in and shovel all the shit. Then they have to bring in the elephants back in, but it's this whole game of doors, concrete doors moving in and out and everything, to maneuver humans and animals around. Anyway, so my relationship with animals kind of goes way back. And so I kind of want to, I do want to shift out of what it means to be an animal, because it doesn't mean like violent.
No. I got you.
But it's like the sheer grace and fury of the animal world is something of this infinite amount of inspiration to make music. And nature, and that's where for me, that's where the church is.
That's really cool that you said that, because my next question was, who are some of the definitive experiences, people, life events, or influences that have pointed you in the direction that you've traveled the last 30 years and what you hear on your releases? And you just kind of nailed it hard with a huge inspiration for you is the grace of animals and the sound, the sound of movement in the animal kingdom and the world, and the juxtaposition between the beauty and the violence, I guess, is
right.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm very fortunate to be living here in the Northwest. We have endless amounts of waterfalls and deep forests, and when it comes to inspiration, when I hear other musicians talk about what their inspiration is, they're going to be name dropping a lot of other bands and musicians.
Right.
But for me,
that's not you.
No, it's not. It's not. It has to entirely be about a tactile experience with nature. I mean tactile, not just touching, but just how sound touches the ears, how eyes, everything, the full experience. Honestly, you want your inspiration, you want to go to the most quiet forest there is, and that's where everything starts coming down.
Yeah, you start to pick up on all the ambience around you of the sounds.
I mean, I need a few hours of silence in a forest, and I have enough inspiration to make a few albums. It's not a big deal, You
do a lot of hiking and whatnot. How do you do a lot of overnights where you go out for a couple days and camp out alone in the forest, like deep?
Yeah, I do. Yeah, I do. I kind of there's a side of me that like I kind of hate pitching a tent. I I never get a good night's sleep in a tent.
Yeah.
I'm starting to kind of move away from I just never get a good night's sleep in a tent. But I am going to be going to Iceland this summer. I've never been to Iceland before, and I was like, I'm not familiar with what I'm in for the weather. I'm going in August, but it's like, well, I could camp, but maybe I won't. or I want to stay inside. Anyway,
are you going for shows or are you going on vacation?
Vacation. Yeah, I'm just going alone. Just no plans other than just to
get away and do something unique. You've been to some cool places. We're going to get into that shortly. Are you good on time? We're at an hour. Do you have a while yet?
It's fine. It's fine.
Cool. I know, again, nature and physical activity, fitness play a large role in creativity for you. Those two things in particular have had a large impact. Excuse me. Let me start over there. How have those two things had such a large positive impact on you? I mean, you talked about, let's go back for a sec. You talked about not being wanting to be in sports and stuff like that. I'm assuming you're talking about in high school and junior high, right? So
hate sports,
but you're a very physically fit guy. You can tell by looking at you that you're fit. You get out, you're active, clearly, with all the things that we were talking about, kayaking and hiking and all that stuff. But did you ever engage in any sports in your life that were no organized sports at all? Okay, that was just something you just didn't dig.
I'm a dancer. I just love dancing. I am a dancer. I just physically, I just want to dance. And I've been a skateboarder all my life, and skateboarding is dance. People might argue with me, oh no, it's a sport. Nope, it's a dance. I'm going to say it's a dance.
Can you drop into a bowl?
Yeah. I can, but I'm scared. I'm really scared. I don't like, at my age, I don't like playing around with dopamine spikes or adrenaline spikes. It's something that young people are absolutely addicted to.
But did you do it back then? Did you do it back then?
Oh yeah.
Okay. So, because I tried to do it in front of my daughter. I tried to drop into a shallow bowl about 10 years ago. So when I was about 47.
Yeah.
I'm lucky I didn't actually fracture my back or something. It was scary as hell. I'll never do that again.
Honestly, I'm not a risk taker anymore. I'm just not. I can't. I've done a lot of abuse to my body in falling, a lot of broken bones, biking and skateboarding, yada yada yada. I also, it's just not worth the chemical gamble in the mind. It's like, it's not worth it to me. It's like, oh, okay, drop in, you survive. Woohoo. Okay, great. But it's just like the chemicals, they dopamine spike and then they just go away. And then it's like, now what? It's, it's kind of like a gambler's addiction, which I'm not into at all. But, I had it. I used to have it. I used to be very, very much addicted to risk. And again, risk is a humanist curse.
It is.
The animal kingdom, they don't exactly have a concept of risk, but humans, we really flirt with risk.
We do crazy shit for no reason sometimes.
Shit for no reason, but also, a case in point, in the entire animal kingdom, the one creature that has the longest survival rate is the cockroach. And the cockroach will run as fast as possible over any movement, right?
To get away from danger.
Get away. So they have a very high sense of fear or whatever. It's like you try on the
self-preservation.
Yeah. So the cockroaches are going to run faster than a rat. They're going to run faster, So that element of risk is something that we really don't have, because what we do is that, say something happened, we feel like running, but then we're like, okay, what was that again? Hey, what caused that noise? Back to the debate of noise versus music. When there is a loud noise, like a car crash or the sound of a car crash,
right?
You're going to see all these birds fly away. You're going to see dogs run away. You're going to see animals just going away from the loud noise. Us humans, we're going to kind of jump and they're going towards the noise.
We go to it.
That's something that animals do not do.
That's true. That's a good point. Yeah.
Take a dog would, when it hears a noise, it'll do this attack stuff. But we almost do that, but we are kind of like have this curiosity and we take a risk to investigate what that noise came from. That humanist bizarreness that we have that is, no matter how much someone tries to explain or decipher this, it's always up for debate. That's why I call it a curse, because he just,
why do it? Why do it? Yeah.
That actually starts playing into music and art, so.
Yeah, I get you, because one of the things I've always wanted to do, but I just cannot do it, is jump out of a plane. And I see people doing it. I see people base jumping. I'm like, God, I wish I wasn't such a pussy. But
I might do that. I might do that.
Might do that?
On a plane. I might do it.
Have you done it?
Nope.
Okay.
I might do it.
I mean, I might do it before I'm out of here soon, but I just because what's the risk, if I know I'm not going to be here soon anyways, why not give it a shot? But I do know the dopamine there, man.
Yeah.
That's scary, because getting to that door and looking down and thinking, oh shit. My biggest fear is that I would have like a heart attack, like in the plane right there. You know what I mean? Like my system would shut down. But you're right. Humans have this weird desire to push the limits beyond what, and I think to some extent your music, you do that through your music to an extent, right?
In a sense. I mean, I have some personal debates about, I'm in a constant debate with my own music. I'm on a constant conflict with my own work. I'll be the first. I'm like, I am my worst critic, but I don't want to be a critic. I just want to ram horns with my own creativity. I just, and so
challenge your thinking.
There was a time when extreme was very appealing, and especially live, you want to see how far the PA can go and just take that one notch over and such. You get inspired by the physics of say NASA, where everything that NASA is trying to do is understand the extremes of materials so they can get stuff into space. When will metal bend at a certain speed or force? Everything about engineering is about trying to find the extremes and understand
pushing the boundaries,
when it will break. Well, if you apply that towards art, that starts becoming a good parallel. But at the same time, though, I think everyone, especially in the kind of the male world of things, that is a gigantic appeal to extreme, and you really do have to kind of get to a point where, like, that's not what it's all about, or what the common idea of what extreme is. If anything, you kind of want, there's a positive or a negative in the scale of where you go. Even doing work that's extremely quiet or just doing stuff that is breaks what a person would perceive would happen. I did a concert a few months ago in an old church, and there was a limit on the decibels. It had to be quiet. I was like, okay, that's fine. And I did a really quiet set, and there was people there that are kind of ready for me to play, and they were kind of like ready to put in the earplugs, and they're like,
what's this all about?
Yeah, man. But I actually was like, this is great. I was like kind of happy that I was able to
challenging their assumptions, right?
Sure. I've done half of my music is incredibly quiet and mellow, and my music is emotional. It's not all this up or down. It's like, it's emotional as it's moving all around. I truly make moody music.
Yeah, you do, definitely. There's no doubt. Speaking of that, let's talk about the fact that I led off with the fact that I talked about you have 163 credits in Discogs, and I am aware that that's not something that you actually wear as a badge of honor in a weird way. You kind of look at it almost antithetically, in that it's like, yeah, I'm not super proud of that. But to expand upon that a little bit about how those stats, when you look at them, how they make you feel and what your thoughts are about those.
It's a little bit of a freeze there.
What's going on? I don't know whether it's my internet or yours. All right, you there? You
Oh
back?
yeah, I'm there.
Okay.
Well, hmm.
Go ahead.
Yeah. So I think the only reason why I kind of get a little bit like about the conversation of quantity is that it tends to hijack, the music or listening to the music. Quantity is also falls in the same category as volume. Like for instance, whenever you say, if you mention the band like Sun, you're like, oh, they're so loud. Like, okay, well, what about the music? Oh, they're really loud. Like they're the loudest thing ever. Well, what about the music? Oh, they're so loud, Or if someone goes, Merzbow, and you're like, oh, Merzbow, he's got thousands of releases, thousands. Well, what about the music? Do you want to try to listen to music? It's thousands of releases. And so it turns into, it's a hijack of what the music really is. I mean, it is what it is, but for me, it's, I suppose I was raised to be driven. I was kind of raised to constantly, do something, be in action, idle hands is the tool of the devil. Idle hands is the tool of the devil. There's a phantom, Western phantom
in your head.
Yeah, well, it's kind of like in America, people would call it like kind of like a Protestant work ethic, but obviously that's not Protestant. It's just kind of everything else. But there's this whole thing of stay as busy as possible,
right,
and do something, and then and for the sake of anything. But for me, there's a mantra: is nothing is worse than nothing. Nothing is worse than nothing. Nothing is worse than nothing.
Okay, I got you.
And so to have one day in your life where you did absolutely nothing is like a crime of the day, like an absolute crime.
Okay.
That's me, not saying for others.
Right, exactly. That's your thought process, right?
You need to, your pillow at night, when you rest your head on your pillow, that pillow has to get filled with all the various accomplishments and dreams and visions and things that you perceived in that one day. So the goal is to fill your pillow with as much energy as possible, so then you could actually sleep at night. You get sleep. So these are things that it's in my blood,
in your DNA.
It's in my DNA. Like I have to be driven, and if I'm going to have a DNA of being using my imagination and creativity, a DNA of being an artist, then yes, I have to constantly create. And it's a and if I don't, then it's a very slow death,
So it's really kind of, in a weird way, I almost hear it as sort of an empirical biological imperative for you to be actively engaged in creating something.
Yeah, and there's a little bit of an addiction too. There's addiction, and the more that I create and produce things based upon my imagination and stuff, the more I'm just going to say this, the more love I get, love from others. I make friends. I make beautiful friends, and I kind of get like a very you just like very good things happen when you are doing something that is absurd. It's very like beautiful, like the most beautiful things happen based upon the passion for the absurd. It's completely absurd, the music that I make. It's completely absurd how much music I make. It's absurd how loud my music can get. It's absurd how quiet my music can get. Everything about what I do is absurd. But absurdity attracts like really
other absurdity.
Yeah, other absurdity, but beautiful absurdity. It just in the I think Aaron Turner, even we've talked about this before, like the idea of what would happen if we didn't make this absurd music. Like what type of people would be around our lives? It'd be like fucking horrible, right? We're talking like the most boring existence of boring people around you. You're like,
well, you
know,
attract other really dynamically creative people. Whether everyone likes it or not is a different story.
Yeah,
That's
exactly.
a different story, right? I mean, like, you know, look, I love, you know, everything from, you know, Jethro Tull to Black Sabbath to Death.
Yeah.
Okay. I mean, I love all this shit and music. I'm a guitar player, but I've never. It's not about me here, but what I'm getting at is that, like, I've met so many amazing people through my love of music, and even doing this channel that I started 2 years ago, very sort of half-assedly during the pandemic. It was like, you know, I'm probably not any good at this. And then I started realizing, no, actually, I'm pretty good at this. I think, you know, I bring a dynamic that's important to someone out there. And, you know, we've met now as a result of this, which, you know, because I just reached out and said, hey, man, I like what you do. I want to talk to you about it. And you're kind of like, why? Why do you want to talk to me about it? But now I think you understand why. In talking with me, you probably understand why. I have a keen interest in what makes you create and do this thing, right? And so, as you say, there's a synergistic thing there going on, right?
Right.
And so I guess there's I think that the thing that I guess what I was getting at with that, with the 10 question there, was that this absurd amount of releases is, does it ever cross your, I don't think it does. I think I'm going to answer the question for you. Does it ever cross your mind, though, that it might be almost daunting for anyone that comes into your catalog to go, oh Christ, what the?
Yeah, well, that is a problem. It's a problem. I do remember 2004. I was in Tokyo doing a concert, and KK Noel came to the show, and we've never properly met before. And KK Noel is also someone who has a billion releases.
Yep.
And we met, and you know, there's a, should kind of say this, but there's almost like a unspoken code amongst us abstract, absurd artists that we just don't talk about music. We don't talk about we don't talk about gear. We don't talk about albums or whatever. Like, we talk about abstract conversations and everything. So immediately I just kind of, he liked my set, but I just started talking about how while on my Japan trip, I've been collecting Japanese gardening tools and to bring home to work on gardening. And he kind of like, oh, wow, gardening. And so we start talking about, you know, flowers and everything. And then literally goes, KK Noel said, like, I'm really apologize that I've never listened to your music. And I go, well, you really shouldn't be listening to my music. You don't have to.
Yeah.
And he said that, like, I just don't know where to begin. And I said up front, like, I don't know where really to begin with your stuff, other than I had a lot of his work, his earliest noise stuff in the 80s, which I liked a lot. But it is but anyways, we hit it off. We became very close friends, and we did a collaboration together that's actually awesome.
Yeah, it is.
The KK Noel collaboration I did. We remained really close friends, but you know, I had to do some catching up on what he was doing too. But it's in Japan. If you go to the bookstores in Japan, even though you can't read Japanese or what have you, you're going to notice the bookstores are massive, because to be a Japanese writer, an author, you have a work ethic to crank out as many books as possible, or even like manga, right?
Yeah, manga. Yeah.
So in the Japanese work ethic, it's kind of like the problem is that you're not doing enough ever. Okay. In the West, it's kind of quite the opposite.
It is. Yeah.
And so for someone like Merzbow, it's kind of like, of course, this is what I do. This is why is there even a question?
Yeah.
You know, why is it even a question? Like you Takashi Miike, the film director, as you probably know, you know, the guy has a IMDb list that's just gigantic, but he's like, well, I'm a filmmaker. This is what I do.
This is what I do. I just can't stop. Right.
Yeah. Well, it's not like it just can't stop. It's more like you're not even, the idea of stopping is just not even there. You live, you make, you
live to produce. Yeah.
Yeah. And interestingly, in the West, it's kind of like this, there's this big question, like why, how, why, what, how, only in the West, you kind of get people like, hey man, you really need to chill out. Like, like, what, you're a problem because
you're working too hard at 8 hours a day.
It's like, dude, just smoke some pot and do nothing, man.
Do nothing. Lay around and do nothing.
Nothing against people with smoking pot. It's fine. It's fine. I get it.
I got you. Don't worry about that.
But it's like this. There is this thing of, I think
it's always work smarter, not harder, right?
Oh yeah. There's I do notice that there's a trend lately for people who own cats that they kind of want to be like a cat. You just lie around all day and you kind of, that's the idea of heaven, is to kind of do nothing, lie around. Whereas you have like the dog types where it's kind of like this constant energy and intensity. So
there are some lazy dogs too.
There's some lazy dogs,
but you're right. I get it. Like what are the really wiry dogs, like Weimaraners and the little Chihuahuas? They always have like bundles of energy, right?
Sure.
Not when they're 16, but when they're young, right?
Yeah.
You just the ankle biter poodle that just won't stop, right? That kind of thing. Do you see yourself as one of those type people at this point?
There's the introvert and extrovert type of thing. I think I'm kind of a little bit, I have a lot of contradictions about the extrovert and introvert, like one could say that I'm an extrovert, others, but actually I kind of like, no, I'm a bit of an introvert because I am kind of alone quite a lot. I kind of prefer to be alone, but if I'm performing doing stage, what comes across is very extrovert. So, there's no such thing as these one way or the other, but, the conversation about quantity, truth be told, I am my own biggest critic. I actually wish I did have less releases. I think what really kind of happened was that if someone took an interest in my work and asked for a recording from me, my response is like, oh, wow, I'm being loved. That's cool. Thank you so much for asking, because the music I make is absurd. No one should be listening to my music. It's kind of like no one needs my music. The fact that someone, or how about you, for example, you reached out, I'm going to go, oh, wow, I'm loved. I have no choice but to say yes, and so then it's like,
are you a people pleaser then? Is that what you're saying to an extent?
I'm not really people pleaser because obviously I kind of make music that's not very pleasing for a lot of
mass appeal, right? Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so there's a kind of a comedy to that, and truth be told, sometimes when not so much anymore, but it used to be in the past, if someone asked for something for, say, a compilation that's a bunch of harsh noise, I would give them something really mellow. I would give them something quite quieter, a little bit contrarian, but at the same time though, I'm like, I don't want to fit in. So if you're asking for something from me, thank you, but I am going to give you something that's very honest and something that I really feel is a strong piece of work coming from me that's honest, but it's not going to be something that's going to please what your agenda is or what your project is or so forth. So there's a little bit of that. It's kind of like, oh, thank you for asking. That means a lot to me. But what you're going to get from me is something that is just,
it may not be what you thought you were going to get.
I'm not a homework type of person. There's that one thing for there's something that I always kind of go in my head like, fuck, this is a homework assignment. I hate it. I'm not doing this. This is a homework assignment. Not doing my own. I'm not going to do a homework assignment. And the funny thing is, there's been a few projects where people would ask me to do stuff, and I get easily confused by what they want. And then I kind of, in my mind, I give up and I'm like, this sounds like a homework assignment. And I just give them something. And then they go, oh, this is amazing, brilliant. It's not exactly what we were looking for, but it's amazing and brilliant. Thank you, Daniel. And I'm like, okay, cool. You know,
Well,
and then when the compilation or a project would come out with other artists, I kind of go, oh, I did not do my homework.
I see what you're saying. Yeah.
Well,
here's a good segue. That's a great segue because you're talking about people reaching out to you. So you have a lot of material on a bunch of different labels. I mean, it's I didn't even try to count all the labels, but you've got is it Soleil Moon or Soleil Moon?
Soleil Moon.
Soleil Moon. Okay. Are they still around? I don't think they're around anymore. Oh, they are?
Yeah.
I couldn't find a website that was up to date. Okay.
Oh yeah, no, they're still very much around. I'm not involved with. I haven't been involved with Soleil Moon in very.
That was going way back, right?
Yeah.
And I mean, that's how I kind of came to you. I believe Field of Skins on Soleil Moon, I believe.
Yeah.
And you also had Muslim gauze back then, and that was a big thing that Steve was getting me into. And Steve worked with Bryn Jones and all that stuff. So, you're on Siege, which is more your recent stuff in the last 15 years. Your good friends with Aaron and Faith.
Siege has been a lifesaver for me, and the best label, best people to work with. Siege is actually really run by Faith Colocula, and she's absolutely been a lifesaver for me. A real beacon of.
Yeah, I met Faith once when she and Aaron were out on tour doing Mammoth when they opened for a weird bill, Alcest and Anathema, which was kind of odd, but it was cool. It was a cool show. It was a very diverse show, and I have a couple of Mammothers. I was going to wear my Mammoth shirt, but I couldn't find it. It's in my closet, but I couldn't find it. And we're going to talk about that in a minute. We're going to definitely talk about the one collab. You've done a couple of collabs with Faith, I believe. But what I was getting at was you've done, Siege, Touch, Alienate, Important Records, Beta Lactam, Sub Rosa. Some of these are no longer active, I think. But how did these various labels become home for your works? Did you contact them? Did they contact you? They all came to you.
I never ever go to anyone.
Okay.
I never have. Okay. I never have. I feel that my music my music is I've never pushed my music. People have to come to me. I've never submitted a demo or something, or but that's always been my way of going. It's just, and if no one's asking, well then
so be it.
But at the same time, though, Bandcamp came around, and it's kind of like, well, that's a lifesaver.
That's a great thing. I was going to ask you about that later, but
the truth is labels, I even many years ago, labels were dropping, and I was like, well, and this Bandcamp came around, and I was like, well, I think that's going to be it,
Mm-hmm.
And that has been a gigantic shift in my work. I really like a lot. My problem that I had with labels has always been that when a label has to sell your damn album, and so they have to send it off to these magazines where they have these people that have to use words to review your thing, and the idea is that I want to make music that completely avoids words, avoids language. It's just so, I don't want to sound mean, but there's a brain type of people, they love words. They just love words. They love talking and writing about music, but they don't take in the music. They just love words.
Well, I'm that guy, but I do take the music in. So
no, I hear you on that, but the idea is that.
But I get what you're saying. There's an industry that's kind of generated around music that has to create words to explain it. They have to create genres to explain it. They have to quantify it and box it up and wrap it up in a bow.
Yeah.
So I totally get what you're saying. And as an artist, as a creator, that's kind of antithetical to the way that you're thinking, right?
Yeah, and these labels that they have to write bios and just always words. And when for me, I'm like, the whole point of my music is feel, but also, going beyond words. It's like it's beyond language. I know I'm kind of tripping on my own philosophy bullshit here, but it's just one of those things where Bandcamp came around. I'm like, wow, this is kind of great. I can just, there we go. Here it is. And
you like it. If you don't, you don't.
Well, sure. I mean, it's my music. I've always said this, that my music is that tree that falls in a forest when no one is around.
Yeah, that's a great way of putting it.
And it's like, does it make a sound?
Maybe.
Did it make a sound? It's a very lonely concert for wildlife to hear.
That's a good way of putting it. Well, so you've been self-releasing a lot lately, right? Because of Bandcamp, I assume, right?
Yeah. Well, yeah. Also, just labels are no one's asking me for anything anymore. I got a lot of close friends that have run labels that have passed away. And like Mego was a gigantic blow. Mego was a really excellent label for me. A really, really amazing, beautiful person, Peter Ryberg, who ran it, and he dropped from a heart attack, age 54, I think, or something.
Wow. What label was this? I'm sorry.
Mego.
MEGO.
Yeah.
Okay. Now I've not heard of them before. But I noticed you do have quite a few releases on. Let me ask you this about that. Just
Mego is a very, very important.
Where are they from?
Well, he Vienna, Austria.
Oh, so
yeah,
Austria.
Yeah,
Austrian. Were you, when you would sign to these labels, or you would license? Do you license it, or did you sign, or how'd that work? You just gave it to them. Yeah.
Everything was just like
a word and a prayer, sort of. Here you go.
No, yeah, it's my relationship. My relationship with everyone's friends.
Yeah, it's friends. Yeah. Did you get monies in advance, or how would that work for the most part?
Everything, any conversation about money is kind of like, economics, money is like,
it wasn't a reason for you to do this.
No. I mean, I can give you a little quick story here. Is that in 1990, either one or two, I was really young. I was doing a lot of local concerts. I was doing a lot of like theater soundtrack stuff when I was really young. Doing a lot of like kind of experimental noise stuff for dance and theater, and then doing really loud, harsh noise in punk clubs. My early days was very, it was either I'm doing kind of mellow, mature type of sound work for theater or dance, and then the next couple days I'm doing brutal, harsh noise in a punk club. I went back and forth on that in my way before my first album.
Okay.
So I started to kind of gain a lot of attention for my energy, even though no one's liking my music. It's like this, I'm not making music that anyone's supposed to be listening to. That's still my thing,
Right. Yeah.
But there was Soleil Moon was here in Portland, and he ran a tiny little record store, and that's where I bought a lot of my records. And we got to know each other, but he was very charmed by this young idiot kid that was, making all this noise and doing stuff, and kind of seeing that there's this energy. But he didn't like my music. He still doesn't like my music. Okay. He really, he's like one of my closest, dearest friends, the person who runs Soleil Moon. But we just talk about gardening and hiking. Okay. So it's just, we never talk about music. Okay.
Got you.
But I remember it was right when I turned 21, and him and a few other friends, we would meet and have beers at a local bar. And again, we just talk about silly, fun stuff. It wasn't anything about music. And I really was desperate to get my music outside of Portland, just something out. I just had dreams of just traveling, but I wanted to travel the world, even though I was dead broke. I was fucking dead broke all the time.
Sure.
But it was just this dream of traveling. And the only way to really do it is you have to get this thing called a CD released.
Right.
Okay. You can crank out a bunch of cassettes, as I was doing. I was doing a lot of cassette releases, but it's
cassettes were dead back then. Now they're coming back to life.
Sure. But I mean, it was just more like, but it was like, I gotta get a CD. And vinyl was
vinyl was had disappeared. Yep.
So I remember the concept of Solar Moon releasing from me was a sheer joke and an absurdity, because I really admired his artist that was on there, and I was like, there's no way I could be at that level of, say, Lustmore, Nocturnal Emissions, Muslim Gods, all these other kind of amazing artists that he had on his label.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
I was very insecure and very like, I'm just a dumb kid from Portland making a bunch of stupid noise. I'm still seeing that now. So I asked him, I said, hey, can you tell me, how much does it cost to release a CD? Like, how much do you spend to just make a CD on your label? And I said, because the deal is, I'm willing to rob a bank, and I'm serious. I'm willing to commit a major crime to get money to release a CD on my own, so that I can get
travel, get out of Portland.
Yeah, and I can just kind of get my music out there, as opposed to being stuck here in Portland. Portland was a bit of a dead zone back then. It was not a fun, hip, cool place back then. It was, And immediately he goes, the Solar Moon fellow, he is like, oh, Daniel, I'll just release one for you.
Yeah, I don't want to see you go to prison.
And he was just, he was like, oh, Daniel, I'll release one. Come on.
Yeah.
And I was arguing at him. I was like, are you crazy? That's the stupidest thing for you to do, to release an album from me on your really kind of amazing label. I was like, you do not want to release an album from me. I was like, no, I will. This is over a beer. I was like, oh, no, I live to. And he said something very important. He goes, I don't care about your music. I just care about your energy. I just care that you have this thing, that's your drive, your intensity, this energy. It's like, what comes out of the speakers, I don't care about. But it's just that if you have this drive, this intensity, this energy to create and do your thing, then I'm going to support you. And I was like, well, that's a very nice thing to say, but you're still going to be an idiot if you release something from me, And he goes, well, Daniel, it's on the table. You give me a recording, I'm going to release it on CD. You do not need to rob a bank.
And that was Incineration, or?
Yeah. So it took about a year and a half for me to make Incineration, because for me, I had to really crank up what I was doing. Yeah. Crank up as in, this has to be something that is, you can sink your teeth into. And this is my ticket to get out of Portland. When I say ticket out of Portland, obviously I've lived here all my life. I mean, my work to get out of Portland, to
travel and see the world, and it's afforded you that option, right?
Yeah, totally. It completely changed my life. That one simple conversation over 2 beers. He had 1 beer, I had another beer. I only drink 1 beer.
I got you.
That simple little exchange, it might kind of like my nervousness asking him. I was like, hey, listen, I'm not asking you to release something for me.
I'm just asking you for the information. Yeah.
How much money do I need to rob in order to release it? And he said, I should answer my own question.
Yeah.
He said, oh, well, Daniel, to release a CD in the early 90s, that is, he goes, $3,000.
I was going to say a couple grand. Yeah.
And I was like, $3,000 is no fucking way I can never get that money.
Huge amount of money.
When I told him, I was like, $3,000? And it's like, to manufacture, at that time, the limited amount to manufacture was 1,000 CDs at the smallest amount.
Yep.
There was no such thing as doing 500 CDs. Well,
exactly.
At least here, right?
Yep.
So, and then you have to do, the packaging, blah, blah,
artwork, and packaging.
And there's studio time. And I was like, blah, 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 And I was like, $3,000. I'm like, that's fucking crazy talk, And then, so anyway, it took about a year and a half. And actually went into a studio, Mike Lastra's studio, which is kind of like the Smegma Studios. Around that time, Earth did their very first album, which is fucking amazing album.
Oh yeah, yep.
The one with Joe Preston on it.
Yep, love it.
Extra crapster.
Oh, that's who Bill Preston is.
No, Joe Preston.
Oh, Joe Preston. I'm sorry. Yeah, that's who Joe Preston is. Now I know who he is. Yeah.
Joe Preston, very first Earth album, and then he was on one Melvin's album or two. And constant other ones. Anyway,
are you friends with Dylan? Do you know Dylan then?
We we know each other. We did a concert together. Actually, this is kind of funny. So that first album, Incineration, it finally came out. And again, it came out in an artsy box that I made, and doesn't even have my name on it. Again, back to I wanted my music to be very obscure. I wanted my music out there, but not my name on it.
Yep.
Okay. Anyway.
Yep.
So it finally came out in this really ridiculous box package that is sort of like an anti-marketing type of thing, because again, I'm like, yeah, this is it, but it's very absurd. It doesn't even have my name or the title on it. You don't even know what it is. And we just made 1,000 of these fucking things. It's insane, right? It's kind of like Solar Moon was gracious enough to give me my first album, but I made it next to impossible to try to sell it,
Yeah.
But it sold.
Yeah.
What was insane and magical and amazing, and a proof that absurdity will attract love.
Yeah.
Not reason. So
I didn't connect with you until Field of Skin a little bit later, but I don't even think that's when did that come out? What year was that?
97.
Yeah,
so back to Dylan Carson. This is really a strange story. I set up a CD release show for myself in a tiny little club, 1993. So I was like, and it was kind of almost like, for me, it was like a joke, because no one likes my music. No one cares about my music.
Yeah.
But I'm going to set up my own CD release show to an audience of no one.
Oh, right. Yeah.
And then it kind of turned
no one to show up, right?
Yeah. I mean, it was like, no one's going to care, But then it was like, hey, the club was like, well, who else can we get to play? And I go, well, the only other weirdos that I know, I didn't know them, but that would seem to be perfect was Earth. And I knew someone to kind of that worked at Solar Moon to reach out to Sub Pop and say, hey, and it's like, oh yeah, Earth agrees to do it. I'm like, okay, cool. And so we did a show together, but obviously Earth headlined. And the idea of this being my CD release show was definitely pushed off. It was sort of like
the Earth thing,
the evening with Daniel Menche and Earth.
Pretty cool though, actually. That's a pretty cool show.
And a tiny little club, and tiny. And holy crap, it was
everybody showed up.
Everyone showed up. Not for me.
Yeah, I got you. But still.
But then I was very confused because I was like, originally Earth was 3 people, then it was like 2 people.
Right.
But when Earth played, it was 1 person. It was Dylan.
It was Dylan, no kidding.
Yeah. And he was not in the best era of his life.
I remember. Yeah, I remember he went through some shit. Yeah.
But so he kind of showed up, and like, I think, I mean, I think he just had to borrow some stuff. I mean, I just remember he just had one DoD overdrive pedal and a guitar and a tiny amp, and he kind of played, but it was kind of like this amazing, strange train wreck.
Yeah.
And the audience, it was a tiny club, so the audience was pissed and wanted their money back.
Really?
And the club owners were like, Daniel, what the hell were you thinking? Having this Earth band play. I was like, I don't know what good music or bad music is. I don't give a fuck. I just care about like weird shit and people being honest, even if you don't like it. I just want honest, cool shit. Like I was like,
right.
This made sense to me.
So this was 93 in Portland.
Yeah, 93 in Portland. And,
what was the club's name?
X-Ray Cafe.
Are they still there?
No, okay. Long gone.
Yeah.
Anyway, so I remember I was like going, I mean, for me, I was like, well, this shit's cool, man. It's awesome. And all these sub pop loving grunge people were just like,
what the fuck is this? Yeah. Yeah.
And then
that's crazy story.
The club gave the deal was, I kind of still have this where if I perform, I make sure that I don't receive any money. I make sure that the out of town band gets all the money.
Okay.
So that's always been my ethics, is that when I do a show, I just, if anything, if I could break even, great. Pay for my gas, great, or something, whatever. Just if I can break even, great. Even though I don't care. Economics, money, and the absurdity world that I live in does not mix. So whatever. But I remember the club gave me a big fistful of cash and then going, this is the most amount of money we've ever given to anyone that sucked. It was to Earth.
Are you serious? That's funny.
And I was like, what do you mean suck? It was fucking cool, right?
Did you sell?
So I gave it to Dylan. I said, Dylan, hey, this is the best I can give you, but it's not bad. And it was actually a kind of nice chunk of change. And he was like so nice to me. We bonded in the fact that we are both criminals.
Yeah, you're both weirdos, right?
Yeah, criminals, and we're kind of committing crimes. I still feel like that's kind of the role that one has to be. You have to be criminal minded if you're going to be doing any type of art or music. You gotta have to have a little bit of a criminal mind about stuff. And and so, but he was like going, oh yeah, Daniel, man, that was really awesome what you're doing. That was really great, man. We should do something together. And I was like going, because he just wasn't in a good state at the time.
Yeah, I think this is when he was in his heroin period.
Yeah. I mean, it was just bad news all around. But I was like, it's just like,
let me ask you a quick question about that though. You've been around, as we all know, in the musical element, there's always substance abuse and stuff like that. It's an unfortunate byproduct of a lot. We talked about jazz. I mean, all the jazz greats were heroin addicts at one point or another, right? True. How have you managed to steer clear of all that stuff? Just fear? Or just like, that's just, I have no interest in any of that?
Well, let's talk about chaos. I like to be in control of my body. I like to be in control of my mind. I want to kind of create chaos with the absurd of my imagination. I want chaos in my creativity and imagination. I want chaos in my dreams. But to have my body in a state of chaos where I'm not in control is something that I don't like. I'm not comfortable with.
Mm-hmm.
It is, to me, it's very scary. To create and work on art keeps me out of a miserable state of mind. And when you're miserable, you're going to have to try to find a solution to your misery. A lot of people will grab onto all different types of things that they do to deal with misery.
Sure. Maybe
you're miserable and you need to exercise like crazy. Maybe you're miserable and you need to do this, do that.
Diversions.
But some people, I'm miserable. I need a chemical in me. I need some sort of a nasty element to numb it. That's how it is.
Yeah.
I think everyone can agree on this statement. We're all miserable. We are very miserable creatures.
Well, the world is pretty miserable. Just look around. I mean, the world. And what I mean by that is that, like, and I don't want to get super into the God thing because that gets really tricky. But, the world's in a constant state of suffering. It would appear. I mean, you look around, you see a lot of unhappiness. I mean, look at our political system. It's a fucking nightmare. You know what I mean? Yeah. And a lot of people, like you say, they reach out for substances, they reach out for God, they reach out for religion, all these things to get them through. And so I was just kind of curious though how you've avoided seeing it, because you've probably seen it close up in some of these things.
Sure.
I was just curious. So your whole trip is, I want to be in control of my body and my mind, so I don't want to pollute it with any other extraneous things. Yeah,
there's that, but also in life, especially when you're young, you're connecting with others and your friends, or maybe people that you look up to, and you start feeling who's giving, who's taking, who's giving energy, who's taking energy. And right from the get-go, I started to realize that, especially in my teenage years, people that I knew that were drunk or fucked up on drugs, like they're kind of taking energy.
They're takers, yeah.
And then there's people that that I would meet that would give, and one thing I know is like, wow, they have a very healthy diet, and they take care of their bodies. They're very inspiring what they're doing with their lives, and just constantly having sparks popping out of their heads with ideas and such.
Mm-hmm.
So it's really just a balance of giving and taking. And it's like, the more you can kind of hang out with people that give, and less people that are taking. What happens is when you get older, you need to start acknowledging people that are in denial with themselves, that they are takers, not givers. And you need to be an inspiration to them so they can kind of get out of that. So, you have to kind of keep that flame alive for others that are kind of a little bit blinded.
Yeah, no, that's a good way of putting it.
It's something that, Portland is it's always been a bit of a train wreck for substance abuse and everything.
Yeah, it has.
I mean, the comedy is Portland has always been quite the weed capital of the nation. Everyone just talks about pot. I'd hang around with my friends and with bongs, and they're coughing their lungs out. They're always coughing and coughing and coughing. I was like,
yeah,
I don't want to cough. I'm not going to touch that stuff.
Yeah. That's great, man. That's so cool. I mean, I'm not gonna lie. I've had, well, if you watch any of my stuff, which you probably haven't, but I mean, I talk pretty openly. I've struggled with anxiety most of my life, like really bad anxiety. So I was put on meds a long time ago that really affected my life very negatively. And I got off of them several years ago, but they've left lasting effects. They've damaged. I think they're relatively a big cause of my illness.
Yeah.
But I wasn't like, I was very functional. I did it to stay functional because my anxiety and depression was so overwhelming that I didn't think I could function without pharmaceuticals. And you can do it. I'm not saying there aren't people that need them. I'm just saying that I was one that didn't need them. Yeah. But I mean, I'll occasionally smoke some weed, but it's not one of those things that I'm like, my life doesn't revolve around it. I rarely drink. If I drink, it's a beer, maybe a glass of wine. So I really respect your position on all that too. I mean, that's really it's an unusual thing, quite frankly.
Yeah. I never understood where people get their money for things that destroy their bodies. I always had a hard time trying to get money just to eat.
To survive.
Food. Like I so scrappy broke all the time. I'm like, I just have enough money to try to get dinner. Like, how do you spend all this extra money on cigarettes?
Oh man, cigarettes. You and me are the same. Now, I smoked as a teenager into my early 20s, but
Yeah.
I am like the anti-cigarette Nazi. I fucking hate cigarettes.
Yeah, I hate it too. Yeah.
Ugh, they're disgusting. Hey, can we do a little? Can I have you for about an hour more, or you want to roll?
Well, we're pushing the 2-hour mark, right? So
yeah. About 30 minutes?
Yeah, sure.
Okay, 30 minutes. And here's what I wanted to do. I want to pull up some of your music because I want to let some people get a vibe for what you are about, even though I know you really don't want anybody to listen to this stuff. Let's start with this one, which was the very first one that I knew of. And we're gonna now we're not gonna play these for long periods, okay? Can you hear me?
There's some flanging going on there. There's some weird flanging.
Now, still?
I don't know. It sounds terrible.
Does it really?
I don't know what I'm hearing.
Well, it's actually the remastered version of Field of Skin. I don't know.
Well, I know, but how it sounds through the circulating feedback loop of our.
There's a feedback. There's a feedback loop. Okay, hang on a sec. Hold on. Let me see.
I don't know what to say. I mean, whatever,
No. If that didn't sound right to you, see, I couldn't hear it on my end. Hang on, because
what is that?
Yeah, let me try to do this. Hang on.
I don't know. I mean, whatever,
Now, we don't have to do this then. If it was acting weird on your end, unfortunately, I can't hear it on my end, and it's weird. It usually gives me the option. Let's try this. Hang on. I'm wondering if it's because I'm in a different. I have two different windows open. That's strange. Why is that? Let me try this one here. And if this sounds weird on your end, tell me. Okay?
I mean, it's just a bunch of noise, so it doesn't really matter, it's like.
Well, no, I disagree. I think there's some really cool stuff here. Just give me 1 minute. Just give me 1 minute here. I want to see. Okay, so this is Vilka. Which is, you want to explain what this, how you created this? Because it's a pretty interesting story.
Well, one problem is that I have a very difficult time remembering anything that I've done because I'm so kind of forward.
Mm-hmm.
So Vilke was the first album that Siege Records released from me. I had a very, I know you're talking about how I'm very driven, but you do need to kind of know that I have peaks and valleys. Right now, I'm actually in quite a valley right now. I'm having a very difficult time trying to finish any type of new recording. I work on music about 1.5 to 2 hours every single night, and I'm having a problem with a lot, just trying to get something that I'm really confident with right now, as I'm talking about. For Vilke, there was a time that I had the same problem, and Siege really wanted to release something from me. I said, well, that's cool, but I'm really having a hard time trying to get something going. And I kept on apologizing to him, like, things are not gelling enough up here.
Right.
And finally, something started to happen. They're like, oh, okay, Daniel, that's good to hear that you're back on track, making some new music that you're happy with. Oh, by the way, we want this to be a double LP. And again, I'm like, that's a very bad idea. I do not recommend doing a double LP of anything that I do. It costs a lot of money. People don't really buy my music much.
Right.
Most labels they can't really quite move a lot of my stuff. Okay. So, and like, nope, Daniel, it's going to be a double LP. So I gotta give us something. And, the only spark that I had was, at the time I was working at elementary school. I still work for a school. I've been doing that for a long time. Now I work at a middle school, but at the time it was an elementary school. And I remember I was asked to chaperone several classes to spend the night at the zoo. Sounds
Wow.
really, really weird, but true.
How about that?
And you spend the night at the zoo in these little cabins, you know. And before that happened, this young girl, little girl, she goes, "Oh, I did that last year. It was awful. I couldn't sleep at all throughout the whole night." I was go, "Why?" He goes, "Because you have to sleep right next to the where they have the wolves and the coyotes, and they're howling all night long."
No kidding.
And I was like, "Really?" It's like, "Yeah, I couldn't get to sleep. The wolves were howling all night long, you know." And so then I was like, "Oh, that sounds pretty cool." And so what I did was I brought my recorder, and we're in this cabin at the zoo, Portland Zoo, and all the kids started to fall asleep. I snuck outside with my recorder, and I just set it out there, hit record, and sure enough, the wolves are howling and howling and howling. I said, "Well, this is pretty cool."
Mm-hmm.
Before all that, several years before that, I was camping, and I would hear howling in the middle of the night, and it always was. You know, it's like I don't have my recorder with me, or maybe my recorder was crap. I just wasn't able to get it. But you know, wolves are going to howl when you when in the most convenient and inconvenient time. Okay, but this was like an opportunity of like, oh, okay, get to spend the night at the zoo and hear the wolves howl. So I got some recordings, and at the time, the ability to do time stretching was kind of like a new thing. It was a little bit of an addictive drug of technology, sound technology.
Yep.
I think a lot of people committed crimes of time stretching. I'm sure I have too, but it was kind of exciting. So you kind of discovered if you time stretch wolves howling, it sounds really amazing. So,
Yeah.
but then I had variations where I was layering time stretch wolves, but it's kind of, I was like, I'm kind of missing some stuff. And then I was like, well, I'm going to kind of put in some percussive stuff and drums. I actually have a hard time remembering what I actually did on that album, but I think I guess there's a description here, but
yeah, there's the description right there.
I think someone else wrote that.
Is this all sold out?
I don't know. I likely not. It's very hard to sell my.
Yeah, I'll have to contact Aaron about that, or Faith, and see what's up, because this one really grabbed me. And the reason it did was essentially you're overlaying these they're almost like a chorus of wolves howling.
Yeah.
With some percussive elements, some less than percussive elements, more drony elements. Let's see what this if this sounds weird to you on your end, tell me.
So that thing on their Bandcamp was written by Julian Cope.
Yeah, well, that's what it says. Julian Cope review on Head Heritage site. Alrighty, then let's now commence review section. Vilka sidelong pieces of haunted and eerie atmospheric music with whose dilating post-industrial rhythms and seemingly ever-decaying, ever-degrading, cicada-driven post-industrial drono-drudge inhabits a parallel half-world that of the wolves whose howls the composer incorporated everywhere.
Sure, why not? I don't know. Yeah, I don't know.
But it's cool. Let's see if we can hear it. You tell me if it sounds weird, okay, on your end.
Yeah.
And what I'm going to do on my end, can you hear that?
Nope. Not sure if I even want to hear it.
Oh, no.
No, I'm just joking.
There it goes. There it goes.
I can't hear anything, but it's fine. I don't really get to hear it.
This is very bizarre. I don't know why I'm not getting any volume on that end. If anybody's listening, let me know if you can hear that out there. Well, let me try something real quick while that's going on. Just give me one moment. I'm going to listen to it on my phone quick and see if it's working. And the reason
You can just drop the link in the comments, and everyone can have their own listening party.
Yeah, it's not playing. That's very bizarre.
You can just drop the link in the comments, and everyone can have their own.
Yeah. Okay, so that didn't work. That didn't work like I'd hoped it would.
I haven't heard that recording since I made it, so.
Okay, well, that didn't work. I'm not sure why it didn't work, but we'll let me just stop presenting there. But I did this before with another artist, and we listened to a lot of his music, and it was, I can't hear anything. I don't know why. I don't know what's going on there. I have two separate windows up, and I think that's what the problem is, and I don't know how that happened. But a couple more questions, Daniel, then I'll let you get out of here because I really appreciate your time. How did the Progeny of Flies thing? Did Andrew check in with you, or how'd that come about?
What's interesting about Progeny of Flies with Andrew Lyles is we absolutely did not know each other. Typically, if someone wants to collaborate with me, we need to be friends. And I mean friends, as in like we were talking about everything not music related. It's a friendship connection outside of music and everything.
Right. Mm-hmm.
And at the time, I was collaborating with a lot of people as something to try to challenge me and discipline me to experiment with creativity, working with others. There was especially in the 90s, I was very much against collaborating. Just because I wanted to really put as much energy into my solo work and try to strengthen it, because I always felt like it just needed work. I remember in the mid 90s, I did a few shows with Merzbow, and he even asked me to collaborate. And I was like, maybe, but it was this thing where I kind of was like, I need to kind of work on myself first, right. And so I had a very anti-collaboration attitude in the first decade, only because it was important for me to try to find myself and work on. But then when the uh-ohs started coming around, I kind of felt like, I think collaborating would be a very positive and constructive thing for me to do. And actually, the first person I ever collaborated with was with Kiyoshi Mitsutani. Kiyoshi Mitsutani was one of the original members of Merzbow in the 80s. And Kiyoshi Mitsutani is my absolute favorite Japanese sound artist. Absolute favorite. He's an incredible artist. He's no longer active, but his work is incredible. The 80s Merzbow recordings are a lot more intricate and strange and odd. They're not like extreme so much. Mm-hmm. And a lot of it was because of Kiyoshi and Masami Ikeda. Anyway, so my first collaboration was with Kiyoshi Mitsutani, and we did an album called Garden. We ended up doing another one called Song of GK. Mm-hmm. But it opened up a door for me. It was like, hey, you know what, Daniel, maybe it's time to start work with others. But for me, it was always about friendship. Okay, so Bad Electrum Ring, the label was releasing a lot of albums from Andrew Lyles, and he was here in Portland, Bad Electrum Ring. And
the guy that owns Beta Lactam?
Yeah.
Okay.
So he released something from me, and then he was also releasing a lot of Andrew Lyles, and he was just kind of like, hey, you two should do something together. It'd be really cool. I never heard of Andrew Lyles before. I didn't know who he was. He did not know who I was.
Right.
He didn't really know. We were strangers.
Right.
Okay. And for me, I was thinking, well, I don't know if this is a good idea or a bad idea. But if you, the label, thinks it's a good idea, I was like, why not?
Why not? Why not give it a shot? Yeah.
So we just did a little quick email, and it was so informal, like, hello, Andrew. Hello, Daniel. Okay. And I'm like, don't know each other. I don't even know what I heard. One of those recordings it gave me, I was like, oh, yeah, this is cool. It's not, And it was cool. You know, I was like, okay, fine. And then he might have heard one of my from also Bed Electrum Rings. So I was like, okay, you know, like we both knew that we're not idiots and this is not going to be embarrassing for both of us. So it's almost like it's like a blind date.
Yeah.
So it was kind of like, all right, something could happen and we're not, you know, this is not going to be embarrassing. And for me, what I heard in his music before collaborating was that he had a very strong sense of musicship that I don't have. And I saw that his strength was really actually composing, putting things together in a very musical manner that I was like, that's a strength that you have, I do not have, but you have. So for me, I was like, how about I record a bunch of acoustic instruments in the way that I feel is honest to me for sounds.
Right.
And I'll go give it to you, and then you try to make something rather musical out of it. And he was like, sure. Again, blind date.
Right.
So I recorded, I used a lot of instruments that I just can find free or broken or cheap. Again, I work at at school, so I'll go and borrow instruments from the band room and get some sounds out of that. Like I just I don't own instruments. I just don't own instruments. I just, you know, if I think I've had a cello that I found at a garage sale for $5 cello. It was worth $5. All right. It was a piece of shit.
Yeah.
I
I heard
like,
you
$5
talk about
for an old cello, you know.
I heard
fine.
you talking about finding
And so I was just recorded
Echoplex.
Yeah.
For 50 cents or something.
Yeah. Well, I never really used that, but I did find one. Yeah. But anyway, so that's not kind of how I am, where I just I found a lot of you know, like a cheap harmonica or, you know, so acoustic instruments. So I gave him a bunch of recordings of these sounds that I made. And boom, like overnight, it took like 2 days or something, like ridiculous. I get a link for him to download, or was it a download? I don't even know. Maybe it was a CDR. I can't remember. I was like, what the fuck? You finished this already? Like, I was like,
yeah, he's crazy.
Like what? And then I was like, at first, the speed that he turned around was so fast that I had my doubts that this was going to be a good recording. I was like, this is so fast. I kind of almost have my doubts. Like, did you spend any time thinking about this or what? You know,
right.
And I heard it. I was like, oh my God, this is really good. This is amazing. This is beautiful. It's incredible. It was inspiring. It was a perfect example of what I needed in my life at the time, is a little bit of a kick of inspiration from another artist and their absurdity approach in doing their music. And I was like, this is great. This is solid gold.
Yeah.
This is solid, you know? And
that's one of my favorite recordings. Cause I mean, I just really like, Andrew is sort of a savant in a way of sound manipulation. And we talked about that earlier, that you kind of hate that term, but Andrew really is incredible at putting things together that don't feel like they should ever go together. You know what I mean?
So it was like, wow, that was the easiest collaboration I've ever done for someone that did not know at all. And I was like, wow, this is really great. That was because there, truth be told, I've done a lot of collaboration with good friends that have gone nowhere, or could be a little bit uninspiring. I mean, there's actually a lot of unreleased stuff I've done. And, you know, it's like, okay, friend or no friend, still, is the work honest? And the Andrew Lyles collaboration was very honest, considering he was working with someone that we're not friends. We didn't know each other.
Yeah, right.
Good news is, a few years later, we finally met in person in Mexico City, of all places.
That's wild.
I opened up for a Nurse with Wound.
No shit. Oh, and he's in Nurse. Yeah.
And it was I can't remember what year it was, to be honest. I can't remember, 2009 or something. It was really amazing concert. It was crazy. We performed in a medical museum. It was a museum of medical, like the history of medicine in Mexico.
Wow.
So they had endless cases of wax face masks of diseases.
Oh.
And they had a whole room. This is actually a funny story. I was doing sound check. And it was so fucking loud, right? And the sound guy was this huge macho. He had a big caterpillar mustache, no English. And I was like doing charades, telling him about the sound. Like, oh, it has to be boom, boom, you know. And it was like so loud. There's no one in the area because it was sound check, right?
Yeah.
And we got so loud and it was done. Andrew Lyles and Stephen Stapleton come down, and Stephen Stapleton was like, oh, bloody Menche, so loud you were shaking the speculums off the counters, you know. And so they had these antique speculums and antique surgery devices on display in the museum. And apparently my sound check was so intense, it was like shaking
awesome
stuff off in front of Nurse of Wound, you know, while they're like checking out the museum. They're like, what the fuck's going on here, you know?
Yeah. It's like a Slayer Slayer thing or something like that. What so you met Andrew then?
It was great. It was, you know, I met Andrew. He's just fucking $1 million personality. And then, you know, I got to meet Stephen Stapleton for the first time, and he's a $1 million personality.
Yeah.
And you know, again, I don't like engaging with other artists about what we do. I heard from someone that knows him, from someone that he took his kids to see Snoop Dogg in Ireland, I believe. Okay. And while we're in Mexico City, I noticed he had a suit jacket, but underneath, like, I saw something that was definitely looked like maybe the top head of Snoop Dogg. So I kind of broke the ice and was like, hey, so Steven, tell me about Snoop Dogg. And he goes, why are you asking me that? Because you're wearing a Snoop Dogg shirt right now. He goes, how do you know? I was like, oh, I know my Snoop, you know. And he opens it up, and it's a big Snoop Dogg shirt that he got when he went to the concert, which broke the ice. And he was telling me all about his experience of going to see Snoop Dogg for the first time, not knowing anything about Snoop Dogg.
No kidding.
And just kind of witnessing the sheer insanity of a Snoop Dogg show.
That's super cool.
And I've seen Snoop Dogg live too. It's kind of crazy. It's really a great show. It's crazy.
Hey, let's touch on a couple of your recordings, and I'll get you out of here.
Oh yeah, sure.
So some stuff that jumps out at me is the Crater collaboration with Faith and Mammofer and Aaron. That is a really, really cool recording. There's a lot of melody in that recording, but it's you kind of get in there and, for lack of a better way of putting it, you fuck it all up in the way that you do it. And it's really, really cool. So that would be one that I would suggest people check out. Any anecdotes on that one quick?
Well, it was, I mean, the cool thing was, I got to know them really well. We would go hiking quite a lot together, and those were kind of like the best times, really. Both of us would have recorders. We would just record, nature sounds and nature this and various things. So we just have a lot of stuff. So I wanted to try to make an album that has a document of friendship, in a sense, of exchanging of sound ideas and actual sounds. I also wanted to try to make a whole recording that is purposely confusing, which is something that is actually a word that I'm kind of always using about my music, is to create confusion. Is this acoustic? Is this electronic? Is this an interior recording? Is this an exterior recording? Where is this coming from? How, everything is very confusing. To create almost a dizzy effect of awareness. So of course, I'm very much aware with Mammofer recordings, and they're very much aware of my recordings. So I wanted to try to make it so it's not an obvious collaboration or a sandwich, so to speak.
Yeah,
of,
right.
this is my stuff, this is your stuff. It's put together. Okay, it's done. No, we're not doing that. So it's more like a journey as you're walking or like hiking. As like almost like you're hiking in a forest. You're not quite sure. You're getting a little bit lost in the forest, type of thing. It's you have sounds of a piano mixed with time stretched barking seals, from the Oregon coast, or I think I had these recordings I made in Cologne, Germany, of the largest cathedral in the morning when there was no tourists around, but the custodians, the janitors, were cleaning the cathedral with vacuum cleaners. So the acoustics in the cathedral, the largest,
all that crazy reverb and echo,
second largest cathedral in the world, no tourists, just vacuum cleaners.
Sweet.
I was recording all that shit, so, but mixed with, wind blowing in a forest, creating this just gigantic confusion.
When you talk about time stretching, let me just interject one moment. What do you, and I'm not asking you to give away any secrets here, but like what kind of things are you doing effects wise? Like what kind of filtering are you doing with something like that, for example? Like what kind of things are you doing to distort it into something that we don't know as a vacuum cleaner?
I don't even know myself. I mean, the deal is with like, as far as tools that I use,
right?
I really just rely on filters, frequency filters, just filters, EQ filters, keeping things as simple. Like I try to treat the tools that I use, I treat them literally almost like carving tools. So like you're carving frequencies out, you're boosting frequencies up, it's pretty much all I really do.
And you're using mostly analog stuff? You're not using digital stuff?
Everything. You
don't use any digital software to fuck things up like Autech or anything?
I use everything.
Okay.
I use everything. I use a lot analog, a lot digital. I use everything.
Okay. And what do you use in software wise? Do you use like Pro Tools or?
No, I don't know anything about Pro Tools. Software, I use Adobe Audition. The simplest, most basic, so I just can work with one sound at a time and really sculpt and chisel it.
Okay.
Like I just as minimal and simple as possible is what I work with. If it's not software, then with hardware, I do the same thing. But I just, I'm not a
tech geek.
No, not at all. There's a statement from an old documentary about the Amish that for reasons unknown, goes in my head almost every day. And there's I think it was called The Devil's Playground. It was about teenage Amish who get away from the Amish for 1 year, and maybe they'll come back, maybe they don't, but they ended up, buying muscle cars and doing car racing and taking
you should know I live right in the heart of Amish country in Pennsylvania, literally.
So there's this interview of this old Amish guy, like he's kind of old, and he goes, let me just make things clear. It's not like we have anything against technology. We use technology all the time. The question is does this technology get in the way with God? And he opens up a flip phone. He has a flip phone.
Mm-hmm. They do.
And he's like, if this flip phone, cell phone thing, if this gets in the way of God, then we just toss it out. Yeah. We just want to make sure that technology doesn't get in the way of our goal as the Amish, and there's something.
I'm going to tell you right now, Daniel, some of the nicest fucking homes in Lancaster, Pennsylvania, the Amish own them. They have massive networks of cash. They are incredible. But I will tell you this also, and this is something you would really admire them for. They're the hardest working people I have ever seen in my life. They start at the crack of dawn and they don't finish until they go to bed at night. They are working.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's a cool thing.
But it's something that kind of goes through my head about, just not allowing technology to get in the way of the big goal. So when I work with my music, I really stick with the most simplest tools. I don't get weird or crazy with effects or anything. Just try to keep things as simple as possible. So with the Mammoth stuff, if anything, when I do variations, it's kind of like the problem with this and this, that, and this is like there might be too much effects or too much this and that, and just reduce. So so anyway, I don't go crazy with technology.
Okay.
Really, what dealing with is a lot of layering, multiplication of things. Kind of the magic is in the mix. That's where you're really going to get the magic, is in the mix.
Do you do all your mixing yourself, or do you have your stuff mixed? Or
I do everything myself. The only thing I do not do is I do not master, and
okay.
I refuse to do any type of mastering. That's engineer thinking.
Right.
So I hire a really good engineer, Timothy Stonework, who does stereophonic mastering. It's a superb engineer for all things. He does everything for Mississippi Records, and
okay.
So he remasters a big stack of Afghan 7-inches from the 60s that are the only recordings in existence, and he'll clean up those 7-inches and get them mastered.
I'm like you. The mastering, that whole thing is even mixing's beyond me a little bit. But hey, I wanted to talk about the project you did with John Halm, Orthrus, I guess it's called, right? Orthrus.
Yeah, I kind of forgot about that one. I think that one was something where we went. Actually, what happened was we went on a hike together. There's a monastery here in Oregon called Mount Angel Monastery. It's this very strange monastery. And so I took him and them to this monastery. And I said, hey, there's these monastery bells that ring at noon. So let's try to get down there, record it. So we both had recorders.
Mm-hmm.
We spent the whole day recording things around the monastery. But then we went to Silver Falls, which is this amazing place here in Oregon with all these waterfalls. It's absolutely amazing, incredible.
Okay.
It's one of the most beautiful places here in Oregon.
Yeah, I've not gotten out there.
And so we went there and we're kind of recording, nature sounds and nature stuff. I remember it was raining, so we both had, various interesting recordings. And then we just took those and did something, and he released it as a split 7-inch. That's all I kind of remember, to be honest. Another kind of example of, he really wanted to
work with you.
And I was like, oh, okay, sure. Yeah.
Well, the reason I brought that up too is because, which I think you can only get that digitally now. I don't see any hard copies of that. However,
I have a couple boxes of them.
Oh, do you? Oh, then we got to talk then. Okay.
Yeah, I have like a few hundred. I probably have like 100 copies of that 7-inch down in my basement.
All right, we'll talk about that.
I don't know what to do with them. I don't know.
Well, I'll buy one of them, but or a couple of them maybe. But the I don't know if you were aware, but he did a box cassette thing that just came out in November called Rust and where'd it go? Shit, Whiskey and Rust.
Yeah.
And the one track on there has a super long title. It's a 27-minute track. It says this crazy long title. I'm not even going to try to read because it's too long. But it says House of Menche Studio 2014. Was that something you were involved in then? Did you do some, or do you not even know about this?
Oh, yeah. Well, I was doing I did this little fun project off the side called Beast.
Right.
And it was all, I was like kind of, I was taking a break from my solo music, and I just wanted to make disco music, like just disco beats.
Right.
And then I would record Arrow here growling, and I would just do really weird stuff with it. And so I just wanted to do like a little project that was absolutely the opposite of my solo work, where it was like kind of like disco noise. And then I had a kind of thing where I was like, well, anyone who wants to join in can, you know, it's an open door. It's just this fun thing.
Right.
And so I was like, John was like, oh, yeah, sure. I'll do it. I was like, oh, yeah, sure. Yeah, sure. You know, just make some noise. I'll take the noise. I'll just add it in, yada, 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 you know. And what was kind of interesting was I think he was getting kind of frustrated with the whole Agalock thing. So with that, I kind of fell from him.
Right.
I was encouraging him to just like, you know, just make a bunch of noise. Just do whatever you want to do. Just be free, you know, just do, you know, don't think that you're trying to impress anyone. Just make a bunch of noise, you know. And I don't think anyone really encouraged him to do that. I don't think anyone was really around that had a criminal mind like I had of like, just do whatever the fuck you want to do, man. Just do some cool, just do whatever, you know.
Right. Do some weird shit.
So we went around and he had the Agalock studio space. I said, well, how about we just record you making guitar noise? Just do that. Now, again, I don't know anything about music. I don't know anything about guitars. I don't know anything about anything. And so we went to the studio, their practice space, and I just set up a recorder. And I just sat on a chair. I was like, yeah, John, just make a bunch of noise. And he did. And then we did some more, and he was like, that felt really good, Daniel. Like, that felt really good. I was like, oh, that's cool. Yeah, you should just do more of that. You know, I just was encouraging him to like, yeah, be weird, dude. Make some weird noise, do weird, whatever. Just do, you know, I didn't really quite know that he had a frustrations and being in a band. Because I don't know anything about being in a band.
Well, they ended in 2016. So
yeah. So anyway,
they've gotten back together since, by the way. I don't know if you know that.
Yeah. I heard
they just reformed to do some live stuff. So
yeah. So I mean, they're all nice folks. I just don't know anything about music or
the dynamics of it. Yeah.
What about he went crazy and started doing solo stuff. And then some of those sessions apparently he kind of used on this new thing. He gave me the cassette. I don't have a cassette player, so
yeah, neither do I. But I think I'm gonna get a copy now. I know that you're involved in it, and I like John's kind of, he has that Ennio Morricone sort of soundtracky weirdness that, you know, he likes to get into. And of course, I'm a big Agalock fan since I know I know Don pretty well now. But a couple more because I want to get you out of here in a couple minutes. Sleeper, I noted you recorded some of that album in Montreal, and there's a note on your page about using a broken down Farfisa at Godspeed. So obviously that's Godspeed's studio space.
Yeah.
Now, do you know the Godspeed guys, or were you ever?
A bit. I mean, I opened for them a few years ago. I'm more close with the filmmaker who does all the films for Godspeed.
Oh, okay.
Carl, and he's a really old friend of mine, and really he's an incredible artist. He actually just did the artwork for the new Kanye album, To Be Cruel.
Oh, he did. Okay, yeah, I just heard about that Kanye yesterday. In fact,
so Carl, again, I mean, I connect more with the non-music people. You know what I'm saying? So Carl is the guy who does all the films for Godspeed Live.
Okay.
And I know a few other people, but I was in Montreal and they were like, oh, hey, yeah, you can, I have my recorder with me. Goes, hey, if you want to spend the afternoon and, in the practice space. And, I was like, oh, yeah, sure, cool, And it was a really, really cool room. And again, I don't know anything about anything because it had all these guitar amps, all these guitars. I was like, well, I'm not going to touch any of the guitars because.
Can you even play chords on a guitar? No, really? Wow.
No, I can't do anything. Oh, I can't. No, nothing.
That's crazy, dude.
I can't do anything musically. Nothing. I can't do Twinkle Twinkle Little Star on piano. I can't do that.
No kidding, man.
No, I can't do anything musical at all.
You're kind of a musical savant in a weird way. Like, yeah.
I don't know how these guitars work. I don't get it. What these people are doing, their fingers. I don't get it.
Wow.
Like I don't understand how people play any instrument at all. You
don't connect with it. Yeah. That's crazy.
Yeah, I'm completely ignorant on that stuff. But anyway, they had a big table in the Godspeed studio of like a ton of pedals, fuzz pedals and everything. And then they said they have for Fisa, Oregon, a real old one. And then I was just plugging in different amps and everything, and just doing all these various,
just making noise.
Yeah, just making noise. I really prefer to be an idiot child.
Yeah.
In a candy store.
I see that.
And I don't want to learn anything. I just want to rely on my idiocy.
On instinct, right? It's just
instinct.
Yeah.
And it tends to be that I win the most when I'm doing something wrong, and magic happens when I'm doing something wrong, So anyway, I got a ton of really cool recordings of that afternoon. And
well, the interesting thing about that one, Daniel, the sleeper one, is I hear a little bit of what. Are you familiar with Set Fire to Flames?
Yeah.
Which is one of their side projects. I think Sophie, and I hear a little bit of that in some of that sleeper, or vice versa. Like they got inspired by you, and maybe you probably weren't.
I don't think I'm going to agree with that. What we do connect on is isolation, and we have an isolation mentality about things.
Right.
We have connected before about that feeling that we both share a sense of isolation, and it comes through our music. And so I hear what you're saying on that. What I'm going to say is that we are connecting on more of a vibe and energy, less about aesthetics.
I got you. Yeah. And I'd agree with that. But so are you a fan of like Godspeed and some of those Cranky and Constellation?
You did Freeze, but I think you're asking me if I'm a fan of Godspeed.
Yeah, I'm back. Am I back?
Yeah, you're back. Yeah. Okay. The funny thing about Godspeed is I'm late. I'm late to everything that's awesome.
You said that earlier. Yeah.
I thought in the early days, I thought Godspeed was like an indie rock band, like a Pavement or Built to Spill or The Shin.
Yeah. No, not at all.
I thought they were like an indie rock band that I'm like
yeah,
something to avoid.
Yeah.
And because I'm ignorant and I'm dumb, and I did not know.
Yeah.
And so when I first went to Montreal in 2003, Alien 8 gave me a huge stack of CDs.
Right.
And one of them was Set Fire to Flames. And I was like, the first Set Fire to Flames album, I was like, wow, I really like this a lot. And he said, oh yeah, it's members from Godspeed. And I was like, really? Like, I thought they were indie rock. Like, no. So I checked out the one with the hands.
Lift your skinny wrists.
And I was like, oh my God, what did I miss?
Have you seen them live?
Yeah, many times. I opened.
Oh my God. Well, you opened for them, yeah. Mind fucking incredible.
Yeah, I've seen them many times. They're great every time.
Oh
I've seen them every time. The only times I've seen them live is after they came back,
Oh yeah, when they were.
But due to my ignorance, I missed them in the first generation. But I got to know the original cello player in Montreal, and she's so cool.
Sophie? That's Sophie?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, and then and but it was like there's so much like weird drama with the whole band and members, and
I don't even know about that.
Yeah, and I'm like, I've never been in a band because I don't like drama. And it sounds
Yeah,
like
right.
we're going to be in a band, there will be drama. I'm like, I don't like drama. So, but
Couple quick hitters here. You dropped late last year, I think it was November. You dropped "Let Me Sleep on It," which is probably your most calming, chilled, dark ambient thing. It's very spectral. It's very like I had it on, and I'm don't take this the wrong way. I had it on the background as I'm writing questions last night, and I'm like, okay, this is good because I can really kind of focus. It didn't put me to sleep, but I can see. I used to listen to a lot of that stuff back in the day, like Lustmord and Traum and Nordvarger and all these dark ambient projects. But this is really cool, and it's like 10 hours, I think.
Yeah.
Now, can I ask what the sound sources were for that, or no?
Just, the sound source is very simple. It's just white noise.
White noise. Okay.
White noise, but it's going through a never-ending slow random filtering going on. So it's all just white noise and filters. Slowly.
Just oscillations of the noise. Yeah.
Well, I don't know about oscillations, but it's just more just the things being cut out and swimming. So it's just filters, just slowly filtering out frequencies because white noise is just white noise.
Yeah, right.
So it was more a stunt for me to do to create the worst example of a sleep aid, a very bad way to go to sleep to. I guess I'm joking, but maybe I'm not.
No, I don't think you joke. No, I don't think so. I just about Max Richter's sleep, right? It's like fucking like 16 hours long or something. You know that?
Don't know.
I'll send that to you, man. I'll send you a link. Max Richter. He's kind of a sound dynamic sort of sculptor too, and he did something called Sleep. I think maybe it's only 8 hours, but it's a similar thing. I don't know when it came out. I think it came out a couple years ago, but no, this was very, very cool. And it was, you've done other dark ambient or ambient like releases, but this was kind of like the full on dark ambient sleep assault sort of thing, and I was like, oh, this is pretty fucking cool. I dug that.
Well, it's been a deep fascination for me in this explosion of millions of people listening to pure white noise, brown noise. And, it's like it's always on the top 10 streaming music. It's like noise.
The ASMR stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, there's that. I mean, I just find it really kind of curious and something that I think way too much about on the demand for it, not the actual sound of white noise, but why people kind of want this.
Well, I'll tell you why, because I know why. I suffer from severe tinnitus.
Oh,
like severe. And it's not from volume tinnitus. It's from, I think, those drugs that I took many years ago. I think they damaged something in my brain. They say that when you hear tinnitus, it's usually if you hear a higher pitched ringing in your head or I hear it in my head, not so much my ears, which is more maddening. If you hear it in your ears, it's one thing, but I hear it more in my head of late. And they say that is broken neural connections that are trying to make connections, but they're being stonewalled. So they're running into this thing. So they're literally creating this ringing sound in your head. So for me, hearing white noise that's mutated through filters like that into it's a substitute for ambient, and it helps me to relax my anxious mind at night about sleep, and it helps me calm down. So you're doing some people a favor there.
Okay, yeah. It was an experiment. I was like, kind of was curious, but yeah, and a lot of people have listened to it. It was very strange. I put it on YouTube also so that you can just listen to it all the way through. But yeah, it's something that it's one of those things like trying to come up with something different and new to take a shot at. And I was like, oh, how about like a 10-hour sleep unaid unaid. But at the same time, though, people really like it. But
we could call it Daniel Ambient.
but it, and it's just, I mean, the thing is, those, it took me a really long time. It took me a really long time to set it up to generate all that, just everything.
Mm-hmm.
The comedy is I had to do a lot of demo versions. Okay, so we're talking, there's a lot of demo versions of it. It's like, yeah, they're not good, like, so.
Wow.
So then it took a really long time to get the right 10-hour version.
Okay.
And then it broke my heart that Bandcamp wouldn't allow me to upload the 10-hour version. I had to divide it up into 3 chunks.
Pieces. Okay.
I was like, and then it broke my heart that I couldn't upload it ultra high bit rate, and to Bandcamp. Yeah, and I was like, whatever,
Now,
so,
you didn't make any hard copies of that stuff, right?
No.
Yeah, okay. Like a lot of the self-release stuff, you haven't done any like actual physicals of, right? Yeah.
No. I don't have
ability.
Actually, I don't have a desire to do any physical releases. I've looked into it. I looked into re-releasing all of my 90s albums onto vinyl. I did some quotes with the record press, even Field of Skin.
Mm-hmm.
I considered it. I looked into it. No one else is offering to re-release it.
Right.
I looked into it myself. I was like, what? No one really buys my stuff anyways.
Yeah.
So trying to ask people to buy a
$30 album.
Yeah, it's just like, just let it live on its own. It's fine.
Yeah.
Whatever. I'm not sacred or married to
physical.
Yeah, I'm just not.
Okay, cool. Last thing, I want to touch on your touring stuff. Do you have anything lined up? Do you have anything in the offering? No.
No.
When's the last time you were out?
2019. I did a big tour with Sumac in Europe.
Okay.
And that was the summer of 2019, and that was great. It was great.
Great guys.
Yeah. Oh, best.
Yep. I've seen them. I've seen them a couple of times. Like I said, Aaron and I are familiar with each other. When you do live shows, Daniel, it's a pretty physical thing, and we touched on it earlier. One of the things I noticed in a 19 video was that you have sort of what looks like a makeshift, almost like a stringed lap steel thing that you've got strings on it. It looks like a lap steel, and then it looks like you're using the bar on it, and then EBOs. You're using EBOs, right?
Yeah. Well, yeah. For that Sumac tour, I built this. I'm probably gonna mispronounce it. A baritone.
That's right. That's right.
I built a baritone. I don't know anything about anything, but I was thinking like, no one really makes a baritone lap guitar. Is that what? Yeah. So I made one, and it was really absurd, because it's a super long thing. And then Aaron kind of showed me that you can do this slide thing, and I just was like, I thought it was really cool that you could just move the slide just slightly and change his pitches and do stuff. And then I'm running through a bunch of weird shit.
You have a bunch of foot pedals.
Yeah.
Pedals. Yeah.
So for the Sumac tour, I brought that, and then it was a combination. When I perform live, what I do is I combine 3 elements: is string bowed drones with oscillator drones and voice drones.
Your voice drones, right? And
I'm doing a whole performance where I'm chasing those 3 elements back and forth each other with pitches. So like when I'm hearing on what I'm droning on the strings, I'm trying to do a vocal match with that. And then the oscillators are kind of doing their thing. And I'm trying to match the strings to the oscillators. I'm trying to match the oscillators to my voice, yada, yada, yada. So the whole performance is the electronic, my voice
of your voice,
and the strings. The strings are going through guitar amps, the oscillator is going through the PA, and I have my voice going through a keyboard amp, a real shitty one. So it's like kind of sounds weird and wrong, well, especially if it's on my throat. And so that's kind of was the basis of my performances for quite some time.
They're very cool. I mean, there's not a lot of video, but there's a fair amount. There's a really good one, which I don't remember the name of. I'll find it and link it.
I hope I never see him. I hope I never see him.
Well, no, I'm saying for people. I'm saying for my people that are watching and see this.
No,
I got you. I completely get where you're coming from.
It's embarrassing. It's embarrassing.
Nah, this one isn't. You're not. This one you're pretty mellow on stage with. You said you've gotten a little mellower in the last couple ones, but I mean, what was really cool about it was watching you do the EBO thing, where you've got a constant. And people that don't know, EBOs, you put them over a string, and it's a light source. It's basically and essentially it vibrates the string with light, and it gives you a constant pitch that kind of sounds a little bit like a slide. Yeah. You could use it on slide, and it's really, really cool. Like for people out there that are watching this, Opeth uses it on the Drapery Falls. My listeners will know what that means. Yeah. I don't know if you know Opeth, the band, but so yeah, that was really, really cool. And I think
two EBOs.
There's two EBOs. That's correct. Yeah. You have two.
I don't know what I'm doing.
That's the cool part of it, though.
I don't know what I'm doing.
That's the fun part of it. Right. And I think that what tour was that? That was over in Europe, though, wasn't
it? Yeah.
We didn't get that here in the States because I probably would have been at that. Because I got to see Sumac open a couple times for Neurosis, and Neurosis are one of my favorite bands. But real quick on that, when you're doing this stuff out there, does your sound sourcing equipment constantly shift and change? I mean, what you're using?
Yeah. I'm always kind of changing things up. But I think that the difference between live and recording is that live, I do a bit of an emphasis on my voice.
Mm-hmm.
In recording, there's no voice.
Okay.
When live, I've found that you can really connect with the audience with something that has a very immediate emotional,
visceral thing.
Yeah.
If
I do a whole concert where it's just kind of a bunch of pedals and drones, everything, it's kind of it lacks something. The audience kind of, but whenever I do that and when I start doing the voice thing, it definitely grabs the audience hard. It has to have. I really feel like live, you have to add a very not just a human element, but a
connective.
No, not connective, but what I'm saying is something very naked and very fragile and very like I'm about ready to really embarrass myself. And I it's like, again, I work at schools, right? So you watch these talent shows,
right?
These kids.
Yeah,
on stage at a talent show, and they were so nervous. But and then or how about this? Like, if you ever witnessed, like a middle school or high school poetry reading, and a kid will come up to recite a poem in front of like the whole class, and they're so nervous.
He's freaking out. Yeah.
They're really emotional.
Yeah,
and a little shake, and they're like this, like. It's kind of like this, like they're passionate and like this, and and it's very, it's
very raw and exposed.
It's embarrassing,
right?
It's beautiful. The embarrassing aspect of just going out there and doing it is where the beauty comes, and that's what I really want to try to. If there's one thing I want to try to inspire others, is to be emotionally embarrassing. For the sake of the very greater good.
Better way of maybe saying it, vulnerable. Vulnerable. Yeah. Let me ask you this real quick and we'll let you get out of here. Do you get nervous when you go out on stage?
Every fucking time.
Like anxious,
every
nervous?
Fucking time. I'm a wreck. Every time. A wreck. Wow. I feel like I'm about ready to walk. I am a wreck. I'm shaking. I'm a wreck. And the thing is, though, is that I'm a wreck because I know that what I'm doing, no one asked for. No one wants it. And so what I have to offer is the unwanted. And it's like, it's like I'm really spilling my
But
blood.
do you really think that
potatoes.
people? But do you really honestly think that some people aren't coming out? Some of these people in an audience aren't there to see you. Do you really feel that way?
Oh, no one comes to see me. No, no, no. I mean, maybe some people. Like I did the okay, so I did the Sumac tour 2019, right? The whole
Right.
European tour. And I was like, you know, who's going to come out and see, like, and there may be maybe like one person that was a fan in one city. I remember
Right.
this one beautiful fellow came in Budapest. He was a fan, but he didn't know anything about Sumac. I was like, thank you for coming.
You're my fan.
You're the one
You're the one guy.
person.
That's crazy, man.
And
Wow.
but here's what's interesting, and this is something I learned from that 2019 Sumac tour. Okay, so in Vienna, we played in this gigantic fucking place. It was an old slaughterhouse, huge. One of the largest PAs I've ever played through. It was this place where every metal band plays.
Okay.
It was huge. And I was the opener, right? And I go out on stage, this huge, gigantic place. It's fucking empty. And I play to an empty room. I mean,
15 people.
Huge,
Yeah.
empty room. And when Sumac played, it was packed. All right.
Oh, so that nobody had shown up for you.
No,
Okay.
no one cares. No one cared about. But what I was going to try to say is this: what I learned from that tour was, I go, that's odd. I digression. I also played in London and Paris as a headliner. No Sumac. And not many people really came for that either. Not many people came for that. I was like, okay, no one cares. Fine with me, because I'm making music that no one should care about. But why is it that I have so many listeners on my Bandcamp and so many people subscribing and supporting? More people are listening to my music than ever. And this answer is simple. People who really like my music, they don't want to go out to clubs. They don't want to go out to concerts.
That's a possibility.
They are not. A lot of people tell me straight up forward, it's like, Daniel, I would love to see you live. I suffer from, was it agoraphobia?
Agoraphobia, or yeah.
Yeah. I have anxiety. I don't like being around people. And Daniel, your music works for me on a very isolated, alone basis.
Yeah, one-on-one basis. Yeah.
So it's fine. That's my audience. Again, back to why I made a 10-hour let me sleep on a recording. It's like, well, it's for those people, And sure enough, a lot of people listen to it. So when it comes to concerts, people really, there's fans. Maybe someone might come. It's cool. Honestly, I am not a draw. I am not a draw.
I understand that you're not gonna be Rush or Kiss or something like that.
I'm very, to be honest, I'm very boring. I just use my name. No one gets my last name pronounced right. Fine with me. I agree with that.
I got it right, but I asked.
But no one. I'm not using decorations to decorate my thing. I'm just
a very raw artist.
I'm just a dork. I'm just a dork with a name. I do my thing. But
couple quick comments here, and then I'm going to get you. I'm going to let you go goodbye. But Phil, who's been here most of today, and he's one of my hardcore dudes. He's like, this has been a really cool conversation. Appreciate a lot of what Daniel's saying. Going to check out some of his stuff later. Awesome shirt too. Yeah, your shirt's getting a lot of publicity here. I know the name of the band, Daniel. I hate to say I don't know any Poison Idea. I know. I'm not a big punk guy. That's the one area. I know it's the one area of music I kind of fall down in. It was always the vocals for me. But I'm a death metal fan, so I need to go back. I do like the Cro-Mags. I like some of the New York hardcore, but I need to check Poison Idea out. My buddy Rick here says, Daniel, are you a Poison Ruin fan? Poison Ruin? That's a new band, I believe.
I don't know. I could be.
He says, Dungeon Punk out of Philadelphia. Really cool project, doing things differently. Jumping off point from your Poison Idea. I know Poison Ruin. I'll send him a link for it then, Rick. And good to have fans come all the way and see you like that. Number one fans, as long as they aren't carrying a sledgehammer and looking to hobble. Yeah, that would not be cool. That would not be cool. We want to show off Arrow one more time. Arrow is the star of Beast. And Beast, by the way, I checked out a couple of Beast tracks. It's kind of industrial to a degree, but not like industrial like Einstürzen.
It's disco. Let's just call it for what it is. It's disco.
It's disco with a little bit of an industrial vibe to it. It's pretty cool. It's pretty cool. It's pretty fun.
I'm going to say it's disco. It's all disco.
Okay. You're the guy who created it.
If anyone wants to check out Beast, the final album that Arrow and I did together, Puppy Power is like, it's our best album we did together. That was the final album. Arrow and I ended the whole Beast legacy with Puppy Power, and that one, Arrow is very proud of that one. So
Arrow's retired now.
Retired. He doesn't make any sounds anymore. He was the vocalist for Beast. He doesn't do any vocals anymore.
Speaking of that, in the link in the description for today's video, there is Dan Andrews. I got Andrew coming up on Monday. We've got Daniel's. Am I frozen again?
Frozen.
Am I frozen? God damn it! What is going on here? How about now? I'm live.
Yeah, you're fine. You're fine.
Okay. So in the description down below for Daniel, we've got Daniel's Bandcamp and the YouTube video, the YouTube channel, which is the two preferred places he'd like to route people. I just subscribed to the YouTube because I didn't even know about it until
I make videos too.
Yes, he makes videos. The Bandcamp is super extensive. There's a lot of stuff in there you can buy for $5 downloads. Are they do you offer FLAC? Do you offer FLAC?
I upload everything 24-bit, 96K. If you download the WAV files, you're going to get a huge high definition version of most everything that I've done.
Okay.
So it's all available. FLAC, AIFF.
And there's a lot of material there, a lot of really cool material. I was very happy to discover some new stuff because unfortunately, well, not fortunately, or fortunately or unfortunately, but I came into you pretty early on, 2003-ish, 2002-ish, somewhere in that range, with Field of Skin. And I kind of moved up through until about Progeny. And then some circumstances changed in my life where I just didn't have the disposable income I did to buy, the stuff I used to buy. Doesn't mean I wasn't still a fan. It's just I kind of dipped out on the noise thing for a while. I've got a lot of noise stuff in my collection, but man cannot exist on noise alone. So I had to do other things. But so everything's down in there, and I think you do have a website, but you said you don't really update it. It looks like it's been a while. Yeah.
Instagram is the best place for Arrow and any updates that I do. It's very
and your Instagram is
Daniel Menche. Just Daniel Menche.
At Daniel Menche. So that's in the description as well. Also in the description down there below is all my pertinent stuff. Upcoming stuff real quick here, guys. Andrew Lyles on Monday at noon. I'm interviewing Andrew Lyles, who Daniel has done a project with called Progeny of Flies, which is really cool. As far as any of my upcoming things I've got planned, there are stuff planned, but I think my health is going to really step in here shortly. So whether I meet those things, I know I really want to try to do the Boards of Canada thing yet, which is scheduled for the 30th. And crazily, Daniel, while I was talking to you, I got an email, which you might find a little interesting. It's from one B. Lustmord. And it says, I should be able to do something May 30th through June 2nd. So I'm going to try to stay healthy enough to get Brian Williams from Lustmord on here because
he's a good guy.
Yeah, between him, you, and Andrew Lyles, that's a killer trio of noise, dark ambient craziness. So I want to thank you so much for doing this. I think you did fantastic. I really appreciate it. I hope you enjoyed the interrogation, so to speak. And let's stay in contact. I do want to hit you up privately. Then I'll hit you up about talking to you about what you have in your basement that maybe I can take some things off your hands.
Oh yeah, I got a ton of stuff that's never sold. So
we'll talk. Let's do that. Everybody go to Daniel Menche, the Bandcamp, and check this guy's stuff out. It's definitely different. It's definitely weird. He keeps saying no one should listen to his music. I disagree. I think everyone should check it out. So,
all right, man.
All right, man. Take care, buddy.
Yep.
Have a good afternoon. Have fun at your film tonight. Hang on one sec. Just stay where you're at. One sec.
Yeah.